few minutes late. I apologize. We were downstairs honoring our veterans, and everybody, Veterans Day is this Friday. We're looking forward to thanking the people that protect our world. Thank you so much for their veterans. And listen, let me say this on behalf of our group here, senators and other folks here. Thank you all for serving. Thank you for being on the panel. Thank you for taking your time to come day after elections. And at least, taking time to be here, because this is a very important issue. Homelessness is, not just affects homeless people, it affects all of us. And so we're trying to make it better and look forward to getting started here. What we're going to do is we're going to hold real fast to our time limits, guys. There's a lot of people want to speak, and we can't go any longer than 5 minutes. I mean, Ms. Phillips is going to keep time for us, and I hate to cut anybody off. So if you can wrap it up, please, if you can, because we have to have a few minutes for questions, and we don't want to be here, obviously, all day. So please let's bring it fast as we can. Now, there's no particular order here as we get started here. So if you don't mind, we're here today to hear from homeless people, to get their testimony, to find out how they feel about things. Are they getting help? Are they asking for help? When they ask for help, do they get help? Where do they see improvements can be made, et cetera, et cetera? No one's here to hurt or harm anybody. We're here to help. That's what we're here for. So don't have any hesitation about, telling us how you truly feel and what's truly going on out there in the streets, because thank God I'm not homeless. If I was, I'd be wanting somebody to help me. So here's where we are. Let's get started. First one to come to the front table, if you will, and I'll get your microphone on. If you'll give me a number there, wherever it's at. Darlene Adair, is she here? Well, come on up, Miss Darlene. Thank you. Now, Mike, there's witnesses. If you want to just,
I think it's probably two.
Put you right in the middle, if you don't mind, Miss Darlene. And check that mic and make sure. So we got a new setup here.
Yes, it's
Please
on.
pull it closer to you, ma'am. State your name. Worry about nothing. Nobody's looking over your shoulder. We're here for you.
Okay, I'm
Thank you, ma'am.
nervous. My name is Darlene Adair. I have lived experience. I was homeless over 20 years, which is considered chronic homeless. A lot of it was due to alcohol and drugs. And now I am a part of the client advisory board for Partners for Home. And I also run my own nonprofit called Desire Thy Portion. I'm here to just share a little bit about my experience. I'm nervous, so my voice is a little shaky. Being here is an honor and a privilege for me, because I never thought I would be here. And because people like Catherine Vassell that stayed in the fight, did not give up no matter what she sees, no matter what she hears. I am here today because many gave up on me. I started at 14. I didn't stop until 36. It took me almost till 45 to even get my thoughts and my processes together to be able to stand and move. I lived in many places. I did a lot of things to just be able to sleep in a car. I had to give myself up just to be able to sleep in a car. But somebody kept coming for me and telling me who I am. And when I started with the client advisory board, I went in with a mind to say everything they were doing wrong and everything that I thought was right. And I found myself walking alongside of them in this fight. And I seen, as I began to serve, just like with me, there was a struggle. It is a struggle between putting people in housing and getting people to come into housing. And for me, it's not as cut and dry as it looked. I came from a home, a 2-parent home. And I thought when I went out there that it was just going to be able to have fun. Then I was going to live my life. I was going to go to college. I was going to be all that I was going to be. And I got caught up. And my parents had to do what they call tough love. And they had to close their door. But the door was always open for me to come back. But it was hard to find my way back. And if people hadn't kept coming back and forth and saying, Darlene, this is who you are, in spite of what I was doing, I wouldn't be here today. And so now that I'm out there, it's a struggle. I just spoke to one young lady and she told me that she has bugs all over her. She's in a wheelchair, and I was trying to get her service, to get her help. I could only take her as far as she wanted to go. And so it stopped with getting her a shower. Then I have another friend, I call these my brothers and sisters. He came from straight off the street into an apartment at 60 years old. His son at 11 years old was able to see him sign a lease. And he said, Miss Darlene, I didn't think they had a place for people like me here in Atlanta. And so it's easy to look at it one way, because when I came in at first, I didn't come in thinking housing first was the best option. I thought tough love because that's my preference and that was what was done to me. But I believe that joining together, we can fit something that'll work for everybody. And I just thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to share.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Darlene, do you find the homeless more on the streets today than it was, say, yesterday, for an example? I'm not trying to placate dates. I'm just saying in general. Are you seeing more homeless? Or are you seeing less people needing help? What do you tell me what you're seeing?
Right now, I see it's more homeless, but I also see the struggle with housing. I live with my mother right now. My husband works not a normal 80-hour week. He gets up at 2:30 in the morning, and sometimes he don't come home till 10 o'clock at night. He barely brings home $1,700. If something happened to my mother, I wouldn't have been able to be here to talk to y'all because I would be out there trying to make a living. And he works, and you hear people say, if you work hard, he works as hard as he can. Sometimes unable to stand, his back gives out.
Yes, ma'am.
But sometimes we only have $35 to split between. If something happened, and I've seen it with my father that worked all his life, got sick. And then when he got sick, he didn't have the income. He had the money when it dwindled down. There need to be a lot of more. When I first came to Atlanta, there was a lot of low income housing. And I also used to see a sign that said second chance.
We can't probably deal with the fact of what he makes on his income or whatever. What we're trying to deal with is the fact that the money that comes in for homeless people is getting to homeless people. So that's where we're at. So if you don't mind, if anybody has any questions, yes. What number are you, baby? Ms. 9. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell me just a little about Partners for Home? What do you all actually do?
Okay, so the Client Advisory Board, we look at all of the different regulations and the rules, like even in the shelters and even who gets the money, and we kind of make suggestions. So right now we're doing surveys on the shelters and what are the struggles for the people that are not going in. Why the reasons why they're not going in, because there are beds open, but there are people that are not going in, and we're trying to find out why. What is the cause of that? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you coming and talking to us. Now, Partners for Home, that's a 501c3.
Yes.
How is it funded?
It's I believe it's funded some through HUD. I believe some is funded through donations. That's my understanding of it. I don't know everything about it, but as much as I do study. And
yes, ma'am. So you think some of it's government funding and then some of it's philanthropic?
Yes,
the
sir.
Community of people just donating money and
yes,
trying to help out?
That's my understanding.
Yes, ma'am.
As much as
Do y'all do fundraising campaigns and things of that nature?
I'm not on Partners for. I'm a volunteer.
Right.
For the I have my own nonprofit.
Okay.
Mine is separate from Partners for Home.
What is your nonprofit?
Desire Thy Portion.
Say it again.
Desire Thy Portion.
Okay. And Desire Thy Portion, what exactly does it do?
We serve the homeless with food, clothing, and discipleship. We walk alongside of them. We pay for furniture fees. We pay for groceries, bus passes, clothing. different items like that. But our main thing is to walk alongside of them as they transfer from out of homeless to housing
Now, how is your 501c3 funded?
through churches and through individual donations. And through my board, we give a big chunk of the money out of our own pockets.
So non-taxpayer money.
Yes.
You're saying, through the faith community.
Yes.
And through people that just have a heart.
And we get some grants from like Walmart, we get food, we get
So corporate support.
Right at this moment, yes.
Very good. Thank
Yes,
you. I
you're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for your
much.
testimony. If you don't mind me, we may have to call you back later on, but thank you. Please stay with us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Page.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Page. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Well, I didn't really face homelessness till later in life. And I was struggling financially and then went through a health problem where I kept getting infections on the bottom of my right foot. I had surgery all up and down my leg. I almost lost my leg to amputation. And I did have a toe on my right foot amputated, but I spent about 6 months of a year in Grady with this. And when I got out, I was pretty destitute. So that's when I started basically homelessness. And there was an apartment complex where they had a little brick building, and I used to sleep in there at night, and then during the day would, drink coffee and hang out. And then Tracy Woodard, who's here with In-Town Collaborative Ministries, she helped me get a place through Mad Housers. They build these cabins in the woods. Y'all may have heard of them. And I stayed there a while, and then she got me in Welcome House with a Georgia's surplus, or Georgia, forget what it's called, Section 8, where I pay 30% of my check. And I've been there 2.5 years. And so I'm no longer homeless. I've got a place to stay. But the experience makes me notice homelessness around me all the time. When I'm on MARTA, I can tell who the homeless folks are.
How did you find help, Mr. Page, if you don't mind me? How did you seek help when you were destitute?
I don't know how I got together with Terry. I might have called a phone number about Mad Housers.
Were you living on the street at that time?
Yeah.
You were living on the street.
Yeah. And then when I stayed at the little cabin in the woods, there was about 5 or 6 of these cabins.
Where is that cabin wood? Just curious.
It's down south of Atlanta, not too far from Grant Park, off Custer Avenue.
Okay.
And they have a gentleman owns the land who.
Is it full? I mean, is it?
I don't know if it's full now because they started. I think they started trying to prioritize getting us housing. I had a disability check from all my surgeries and all that. Grady got me a disability check, and then I reached retirement age and started getting Social Security. So I had income, and because of the Georgia Surplus Program or whatever it's called now, I don't think it's called Section 8 anymore, but I was able to get a place for 1/3 of my, which included all utilities, for 1/3 of my rent. And I can basically survive and eat, cook, have cable,
Do you come in contact with other homeless people in regards to ones on the street today?
Not on the street. I have some friends that have since found apartments through the same program I found, but I was volunteering at a St. John the Wonder Workers church, which feeds the homeless every weekday morning breakfast. And I haven't done that in about a year. But that was how I was seeing homeless people and staying in contact. But like I said, I guess I've graduated away from it a little bit.
Questions for Mr. Page?
You're fine.
Mr. Page, prior to going into Grady, where did you live at that point? Did you have your own place?
No, I had been a few months living at that apartment complex, not in the apartment, but in a little building, a little utility building where I could go in at night and sleep and leave in the morning before light.
And that was before you were hospitalized?
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, what was your occupation or what did you do prior to becoming homeless?
Well, I had my own business. I was advertising sales. I was top 10 in the nation at one time. So I had a fairly good life.
So what do you attribute what was the break, or what do you attribute to you becoming homeless?
Depression, gradual depression, where I just couldn't motivate myself. I was, good enough in sales at one time to be a sales manager and to be top 10 in the nation with a company that had 90 offices around. So I've had some success, but I just gradually became so depressed I didn't even want to show up for work every day.
I understand completely. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Would you tell us a little bit about Welcome House? Do they provide any type of support for you in terms of, is there somebody there that you could talk to or who helps make sure you take your medication? Can you just tell us a bit about how Welcome House works for you?
Okay. I'm a fan of Welcome House. They have counselors that you're supposed to see. My counselor's office is right next to my room, so we talk all the time I don't think we've had a formal meeting in a while, and we talk every Monday. We just have a small group that talks, but they have group talk sessions. They have recovery sessions. They have several little things that go on, but mainly they provide you and they have like a TV room for people that don't have TVs, and so I guess it looks a little like a hotel or a motel, but I mean, I'm pretty happy. My room's very small, but I've got cable, I've got a TV, I've got a fridge, I've got a microwave, I've got a George Foreman grill, I got a skillet, I got a sink, and then down the hall, if I go down the hall, take a shower and use the restroom.
May I ask a follow-up? Do you believe that you would be able to stay out of homelessness without those types of supports? So without having the counselor that's with you, without having access to community and those things, do you think you would have been able to make it without those supports?
That's a great question. I really think I could stay and not be homeless, provided I had a Section 8 arrangement. I can't afford to live with my Social Security check alone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I want to ask the Senator, was the gist of your question, I'm 6, I'm sorry. Was the gist of your question about his place, his well-being, or his domicile?
The gist of this question is about his ability to live without having some additional assistance, to live, so my question, and I think you answered it though, but the question is like, would you be able to live in a house by yourself without having access to a counselor, without having access?
That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
what I was thinking.
in that, maybe, are we talking about financially or mental health wise? Because and I guess
Yeah.
that's my concern, and that's a great question, and thank you, Majority Leader. Would the biggest hurdle without the support system that you have now, do you think it would be financial? Would be the biggest hurdle for you to move out onto your own?
Yes.
And I hate to say on your own, because you're obviously on your own.
Right.
But do you think the biggest hurdle would be financial? Or do you think it would possibly be the physical side of it?
It would be financial. One of my best friends who had a cabin in the woods right behind me got an apartment. They got him an apartment rather than Welcome House. So he's just in a regular apartment contract. And he's fine. So I don't believe I'm homeless, at least now, because of anything mental or whatever. I think it's strictly was a financial situation. I don't think I'm suffering from depression anymore.
Mhm.
It helps having a roof over your head.
Amen.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure we are differentiating between homeless and unsheltered.
That's right.
Correct.
Yes, exactly. We need to
Okay.
get back on
Okay,
that.
I just
That's
want to
right.
get back, I just want to make sure we're staying on track.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maurice Lattimore. Lattimore. Come on up, sir. We're trying to keep everybody on our time frame, and I apologize. We're kind of keep running over. So if you hear the buzzer, just give it to us as quick as possible. Please tell us about you.
I'm gonna bullet point you because it'll take weeks to go through that. My name is Maurice Lattimore. I'm founder. Okay. I said my name is Pastor Maurice Lattimore. I'm founder and CEO of Feet on the Street Ministries. Was homeless for years. We just bring it all up to date. Ain't nothing in that past is good, and contributing to my homelessness was a serious case of criminal history and substance abuse on a deep end. But here in the last 13 years, I come out of a prison back in 2008, out of Arizona. My last one, that was the fourth one. Found my way back home. I spent a year out there in a spiritual program, but long story short, when I came home, Bridges was burnt. I'm the oldest of 5 by years, and at this point, the last one standing, but definitely the one who probably contributed to his parents' death and everything else. Don't ask me why I still struggle with that a little bit, but here we are. Anyway, I found myself still homeless when I got here. Bridges was burnt. So I ended up in a place called Peachtree and Pine. It had its moments, and then I had mine in there. They needed a body, and I needed a bed. So by entering Peachtree and Pine, they put me through a little task and bring it on up to date. Peachtree and Pine was part of helping save me in a psychotic kind of way, because it was no longer going to matter where I was. My environment was not going to define my outcome, because the inward person had changed and I had a new way of thinking. So with that being said, I found out that in my strength was helping individuals who still suffered from being unhoused and all kind of problems. We kind of tried to change that language. Homelessness is one word, but marginalized and unhoused is another, because it lets one keep their dignity and self-esteem. We know it don't intend it to be offensive, but we're trying to work on new words, like instead of junkie, substance disorder, relationships with alcohol, etc. So, but to be honest with you, I could go on about a lot, but being in Peachtree and Pine and utilizing a lot of these good resources that you had at that time, now a lot of them was kind of variated, because I came in 13 years ago, but the belt has loosened a little bit now. Don't get me wrong, I'm just letting you know. But through those resources, I started getting a little disability, couldn't go nowhere on it. But I got a break through an entity called Crossroad Communities. And they was able to put me in what they was experimenting in, is they had a complex, 10 units in it, and I qualified for one. And they put me over in there at 30% of that income. I think I paid $105 or something like that over in Memorial Drive. But anyway, that space was like a castle to me. As a matter of fact, it was my first home. That was mine, where I paid the rent, I signed the lease. And I can tell you more. I got my first vehicle as well about 6 years ago. I'll be 65 in about 3 months, come March. And I've since moved from downtown now, in Midtown. And I have a vehicle now, and life, I am able to live a sustainable life. Now, I have no money, all this, but I got me some money in the bank. I got a home. I got a new family, a wife, beautiful wife, loving wife. I'm back in the lives of my grandchildren. Me and the estranged relationship of my daughter is amended. And I remember at Peachtree and Pine when they was been to transition it. It was coming to a close. It served its purpose. It had its look, but it had both ways, its moments and its moments. But it worked for me and a few others. But I remember when Partners for Homes, In-Town Collaborative Ministries, Hope, Atlanta, etc., Crossroads, you put all these entities in that one spot, and they did a fantastic job of transitioning people who really hadn't been in houses in years. Everybody went into a home. And as a matter of fact, I still think those surrounding resources are still intact for that particular mission. Catherine Marchman and Brother Brad Schrills and the young lady Tracy sitting back there and a bunch of others, they did a fantastic job, man. I'm proud of that. So I'm just glad to say that today I'm a part of that. What I do is, just to simplify, I have a mobile shower unit. I go to different areas in the city and I give the unhoused community showers, clothes, and some food. And at the same time, by me being connected collaboratively with a lot of the resources, I'm able to point them in some directions that can help them go further. That's my mission. And
Pastor, let me ask you a question?
yes,
Get run again. We're trying to keep time.
I'm done.
All right, tell me this. Do you see more or less homeless on the street today?
Well, it's being fair to the city, I see more homeless at times coming into the city. They're coming in big chunks because you're known here in Atlanta, we are to take care of the unhoused community. And when that get out there, so in one sense, yes and no. I see new faces. And but that's the way it's going to be when you are fulfilling services.
Thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Hold on, we got one question here. 4.
Pastor Lattimore, I just want to thank you. I meet with people who call your name regularly and who love you and who have been inspired by you. And so I want to take the opportunity in this public forum to go on record honoring you for all of the work that you do, for the ways that you inspire, particularly Black men who are sleeping outside, and the ways that you lift them up. So just thank you for your service. I want to thank you for that.
Well, praise and glory to God.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor, for your testimony.
Hey, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
3.
Yes, sir. 435. Yeah. Real quick, sir, I
Yes, sir.
appreciate what you do. Now, Feet on the Street Ministries, is that a 501c3?
Authentic 501c3. Yes, sir.
Say, what was the first word?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm from Harris County. I talk slow and listen slow.
That's
so
okay.
Gotta help me out sometimes. So you are a 501c3 or you just from your heart?
I am a 501c3. Yes.
Okay, yes, sir. And so, where does a lot of your funding come to take care of this? Because I know mobile showers and things of that nature are not inexpensive to go out there. Where do you find most of your help from?
Well, my foundation was built out of the church that I go to, which is North Avenue Presbyterian Church. And I'm supported by different sponsors, United Methodist Church and some others,
Okay, very
and personal contributions. This year, we're going to attempt to write some grants in the area, but
Yeah.
this is our 3rd year. So yes, sir.
good. And while you were incarcerated, were there programs offered in the institution that you were incarcerated in to help you transition back into the community that you felt had a positive impact? Or was it just the basically inmate management type programs?
The short answer to that is there was no really orientation on the exit point, except for you had to have somewhere to live to be discharged. But yes, I took advantage of a lot of courses in there. I got my GED and took a bunch of spiritual courses and, was able to enhance that a little bit. So that was a.
And that was
plus.
out west, right?
That was out west in
All right.
Arizona.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Bryson. Hope you can get through this in 5 minutes.
That's actually just for your reference.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Kelly Bryson. I'm gonna be reading, so if I sound a little robotic, that's why. My name is Kelly Bryson. I'm 24 and I've spent over 2 of the last 4 years of my life experiencing homelessness. I discharged from active duty service in the Army in November 19, taking with me, like so many others, a diagnosis of PTSD and severe anxiety disorder. And after living off my savings for a few months while trying to connect with the VA, I was ultimately swept under the wave of misfortune that we call the pandemic. With extreme mental and economic instability, $0 to my name, and no one in the state of Georgia that I could turn to, I found myself making the streets, parking lots, and parks of Atlanta my home. I lived in constant state of fight or flight, failing to access the resources that I needed to address the compounding trauma that I was enduring that I endured during my service, while simultaneously being re-traumatized by the ongoing experience of homelessness. I spiraled into a complete isolation and depression, and each day reaching out for help became more and more of a challenge. Who to ask, what help was actually available to me, and where to go for help were things that I would not have been able to tell you. And to this day, I'm still learning the ins and outs of the Atlanta homelessness system. This is a story that's echoed by countless youth and veterans in the city of Atlanta, existing in parallel to the services that are meant for them, a phenomenon indicative of the lack of representation and understanding of the voices and perspectives of those with lived experiences. What do they actually need, and how can we actually make that happen for them? I currently sit as the co-chair of Atlanta's Youth Action Board, doing the work alongside my peers to bridge that gap by using my personal lived experience to inform the city of Atlanta's continuum of care on what the homeless youth experience is and what's keeping us from addressing those common goals what's keeping us from addressing those common goals. And what I've seen, there's a mindset that perpetuates homelessness in the lives of youth and in my own. And there's often a level of intervention that's foundational, the ability to perceive yourself as worthy of having a reality that's different than what you're currently seeing, the ability to handle day-to-day and social responsibilities, finances. There's a functional level of mental health. Left unaddressed, these underlying mental boundaries can often lead someone who might have been just a phone call away from having a home to being what we call chronic. It's the responsibility of those who intend to serve the people, to serve these people, to listen to what they're saying, and rather than tokenize them, to use those lived experiences to guide how we step going forward.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Pull your mic over.
Sorry, I got fussed at for not having my mic over too.
Same.
We got something going on together there. So it's the way you worded something. I want to ask you a question. And again, we're using y'all's testimony. And I know sometimes it sounds like it's like a cross-examination, but it's not. We're trying to get as much information as we can to help fix the problem. You said, I'll just word it this way. Why did you ETS to Atlanta? You made it sound like you're not from here.
I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I moved to Atlanta with my family in 2012, so right as I was exiting 8th grade. And when I got out of the military, it was a choice between Detroit and Atlanta of where I would discharge to. And it just didn't seem like there would be as much opportunity in Detroit. So I came to Atlanta.
Okay, so there was a family connection down here. The reason I was asking that is because the gentleman before
Mhm.
was talking about coming in.
Right, right. Yeah. Yes, my mother and my older sister did live in the city of Atlanta, though they didn't have the resources
Yeah.
to help me at the
Okay.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And if my question sounds like cross-examination, it's not my fault. How long were you in the military?
I did about 3 years. I exited right before the end of my contract due to PTSD.
Okay, and I appreciate you. Thank you for your service. I do
Thanks for the
appreciate
support.
that very much. And you said something that caught my attention. You said there's a mindset that perpetrates homelessness.
Yeah.
Could you tell me just, what type of mindset would you say that is? Because I
Currently-
wonder, is the mindset on society side,
Mhm.
or is the mindset on the individual who's struggling inside?
That's an interesting question. The way that I intended it was it's the mindset of the individual. I am currently in I have my own place. It is a sublease program, but I had signed a lease prior to this for a full year. And the steps that I had to take to get from where I was when I was sleeping in tents and in my car were very intense. There's a lot of things like mindset wise that I had to change in order to be able to, for example, maintain finances, social responsibilities. Having a job longer than like 2 or 3 months was very difficult for me after my discharge. There are a lot of things that I feel like I've seen as far as wraparound services that are offered to the youth now that kind of help to create a holistic and more, and actually in our CCP, we delineate a lot of that. Which is what we passed out, the coordinated community plan. But yeah, I've seen that there are a lot of wraparound services such as financial literacy, even cooking classes, driving classes, things that you need to be able to maintain or be self-sustainable that I just didn't really perceive. It was out of my, I didn't think that it was going to be that much of a shift.
And do you think part of that is, and you've been in the military, you have a unique circumstance because when you go into the military, they kind of,
Baby you.
well, what I'm saying is they condition you to be very self-reliant.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned because a lot of families do that too. They condition their children, their young adults to be the home is a very safe place. And once the person gets outside of the home, they don't have the general skills, soft skills, and some hard skills that are necessary to succeed in an open society where you don't have a mother and a father and a sister and a brother and grandparents around you to help support you and hold you up. So I'm wondering is, do you notice in the young people that we have young people that may end up out in the homeless community, the unsheltered community, that have not had the opportunity to develop the skill set to go out there and function amongst adults, some who may care and some who may not care, and then some who may try to take advantage of those weaknesses?
Yes, I definitely will say, for one, from what I can see, definitely the veteran perspective, kind of having the mentality of like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, that was a huge barrier for me personally in reaching out for help. After reaching out a few times and kind of being told no, I lost all hope in any the VA, any service that I could reach out to. I just went about a year and 2 months without reaching out to anyone because I thought, I'd get the same answer. In addition to the fact that the youth perspective is often that they're not very trusting of the older adult providers, whether that be from a traumatic experience with adults in their childhood or just because they've been in this homeless situation and they've tried to reach out to older adult providers and have been met with just bad experiences, adultism, being tokenized, things like that. So I definitely do feel like there's a huge on our part, we're, as far as like providers and those who are intending to serve these people, building that trust to actually get those people to, reach out in the first place, to know what's out there, it's a huge step. Because I feel like, and I say this often, a lot of what I went through was very unnecessary. There were services specifically that I could have utilized, and I wasn't able to bring myself mentally to doing that.
Thank you.
Let me, one question, I'll let you go because we got to keep moving. Our time is
For
getting
sure.
tight. when you were homeless,
Mhm.
starting out, did you find it hard to find the programs out there to help you? Did anybody tell you how to get to them, or did you have to research it yourself? How'd you come across those programs?
When I discharged the military initially, I did not think I would need any services. So I lived off my savings for about 2 or 3 months. And once I realized I was going to need services, the only place I thought to call was the VA. And I don't know if you guys know about the VA at all, but you're going to be jumping through hoops and running around in circles all day. So it definitely discouraged me from reaching out for, or even looking for what else, there might be. I didn't have a great grasp of the idea of youth services, youth specific services. I didn't really consider. I said, well, I don't have a child and I'm not in a shelter, so it's going to be really hard to get me anything, So other than the VA, I didn't know of anything else, which is like I said, on the part of the providers. How are we advertising these services? How are we getting the information out there? Because I mean, coming from the youth perspective, like it's not a prideful thing, but I mean, I guess it can be at times. You're not necessarily going to be out there like, hey, does anyone know where I can get some food tonight or where I can get a shower? So, yeah.
Hey, great testimony. Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you. What? Okay.
6. I don't need you back up.
That's fine.
No, I don't need you back up. When you're talking with these people, and trust me, I know about the VA. Bless their hearts. But Veteran Services, Georgia Veteran Services is another group. Have y'all know about them?
I helped through SSBF eventually when I did get services from, I guess, the VA fund. So that was the only help that I got from the VA. So
Yeah, well, Georgia Department of Veteran Services, I would put their contact information down. Because they're kind of like the United Way for government or for military, that they will match you up with programs.
thank you for that.
Okay, guys, once again, I keep our time. We're getting good stuff here. And that's, yeah, thank you. Thank you there, sir. Amanda Gomes, please.
Hello, my name is Amanda Leppert Gomez. I am a YAB member, and I am also the program management specialist and empowerment advocate for the newly funded youth homelessness demonstration programs here in Atlanta, which was created out of the coordinated community plan, which is sitting in front of you. My own experience that led to briefly experiencing unsheltered homelessness and then sheltered homelessness really comes from a large intergenerational history of domestic violence, childhood sexual abuse, and mental health issues without adequate access to care that has impacted my entire family. Not being able to figure out the next step in time before I knew I was trying to take care of my mental health, taking a break from college, led me to this experience of like, okay, now my lease is ended. What do I do? So I would have been what you would have called have a severe mental illness. I have chronic PTSD and depression, but I was not chronic because my experience of homelessness was brief. My mental health issues and need for more intensive supports that to help me exit homelessness and enter stability again was made worse by the trauma and stress of unsheltered homelessness and the experience of what I would call an uncompassionate or understanding shelter system that doesn't really center what the experience of someone going through homelessness is. I said that my experience of need for more intensive mental health services and supports was made worse by the trauma and stress of both unsheltered homelessness for me, especially with PTSD, being outside, et cetera, and an experience of what I would call an uncompassionate shelter system that doesn't center the experience of what it's like to move through that system and what it's like to have these struggles. I was privileged though to be able to to have a college degree and 1 year of a master's program under my belt when I experienced homelessness to allow me to quickly be able to obtain a job that paid a living wage, that would be able to provide enough funds to secure an apartment with the assistance of rapid rehousing funds. Quickly. However, I would have been a great candidate at the front door of homelessness to diversion assistance. And due to the way the system works is why I needed more support, because I did not have access to the things I needed. There are extremely complex issues with the way the system works at every stage of the homelessness response system, which creates the continued unmet needs of individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness in particular, and homelessness more broadly. My experience generally with the other youth I've seen out on the streets, heard through my experience with Youth Action Board, is that the access to a housing intervention that provides that financial assistance to be able to get your apartment is a single determining factor of if you're going to exit homelessness quickly or not. The solution, we have the solution. People with lived experience of homelessness are the system experts that are not often recognized in these spaces, where programs are being made, where the COC's decisions are being made. We have done tremendous work with the coordinated community plan in front of you as youth with lived experience to really look in and dive deep into the problems of our homelessness system as they are, creating a collaborative together with providers, a mission and vision, concrete goals, objectives, and action steps of the work that is needed to realize solutions that can lead to a functional zero of ending homelessness. Due to time constraints, I'm not going to talk about specific needs and all of the ideas of what is in the CCP, although I would love to talk with you guys more one-on-one about the brilliant solutions that we can provide from there. But really, with my experience in navigating the system, the wraparound services and that really get to the complex root causes of an individual's experience of homelessness are very hard to access as you're navigating the system. It took me 3.5 months to be able to get connected with an adequate trauma mental health counselor. And that's not often, that's a very similar case throughout what I've seen. Even though my experience of going through abuse, trauma, et cetera, leading to my experience of homelessness is very, very common. There are very exciting efforts creating new programs and leading community collaboration, buy-in, and focus efforts for continuously improving the quality of our programs in Atlanta that are being led by those who have gone through this system. And that's what we would like to see your body expand. The ability to focus on. I have other solutions here I wanted to be able to get to, but I know we're out of time. Okay, so some of my solutions is creating structures that allow. Okay, I will definitely submit those in writing, like or an email. Yeah. Okay, I'll definitely provide those solutions. And I also have ideas about if you do move forward with encampments, how we can best do that as well. Yes, it's for us, it's 18 to 24. Unaccompanied youth, 18 to 24, or unaccompanied minors as well.
I have a question. You're in a unique position to tell us how big is this problem in Atlanta, and then the solutions that you're providing us here and been talking about. How much is that spread around the state? Are there other communities, in Georgia that are doing what we're doing here in Atlanta?
So my unique experience can only speak to the youth homelessness response system, the young adult homelessness response system, not the general system on its biggest
Just
end.
the youth. I'm just
But off of my experience, there are about 600 households of youth and young adults moving through our homeless response system a year. And we are in need of an additional about 208 projects that we estimate for joint transitional and rapid rehousing, which is a unique solution that we've moved forward. Through our program, we were able to fund 30 of those additional slots, kind of as like a pilot before we're moving this forward. But we still have that gap. We have enough access to diversion through the adult population, but we're needing to really work with diversion providers to make that more responsive to the needs of youth and accessible to the needs of youth because it's being underutilized. But the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, I believe the Georgia Balance of State just was awarded that as well. I know that DeKalb County and Gwinnett County are applying for that as well. So these are programs that are HUD funded to try and work in coalition with those people with lived experience to really analyze the problems in your own youth homelessness response system, figure out what the best things we need to prioritize are for those funded projects that we can use with these dollars, but then also create implementing the widespread objectives in the coordinated community plan that you put forward. So it's a really exciting opportunity.
One more question. And you just answered my question, I believe. The projects that you were involved in are funded through HUD funds, public funds.
So yes, it's through HUD is the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program. But the funding for actually paying youth to be able to collaborate in this process is through, I believe the Annie Casey grant is what our own Youth Action Board is funded through. And all of the different programs that provide these services also had to provide a match. I don't remember the exact percentage of the match that they had to have. So they are a mixture of private and public funds.
Now, the Annie Casey, is that a match grant or is that a full fund?
No, that was a funded grant specific for allowing the Youth Action Board to collaborate in this process and be compensated.
What were the ones you were talking about that were match grants?
The match grants are so the providers that were awarded by the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program. So those are Hope Through Soap and Yes, Youth Empowerment Success Services
Okay.
in Atlanta.
Really quick, are those 501c3s?
Yes.
Okay, so those are 501c3s submitting match grants.
Yeah, they had to promise that they would provide, HUD is providing this percent, and then you have to match this percent through either direct dollars
Right.
and
Right, yeah, I understand what match grants are, but so basically the match grant is you're matching public funds, HUD
Mhm.
being public funds. So that's all the other services you were talking about, and the number that you answered the question with, where you said 600 youth passing through
in Atlanta.
in Atlanta, correct? And of course, I know we have homeless and unsheltered numbers from Atlanta, Columbus, Macon, Savannah, and Augusta. And I think what we realize is that the volume, of course, density matters, is the volume is going to be Atlanta. But when you say homeless, are we talking about unsheltered? Or are we talking about a combination of sheltered and unsheltered?
It would be a combination of sheltered and unsheltered. It would be anyone considered literally homelessness under HUD's definition. Many youth that I know who have gone through the system shift back and forth between being on the streets, in a shelter, on the streets, on someone's couch, on the streets.
Right.
Back and
Well,
forth.
under federal guidelines, rewritten federal guidelines within the last 3 to 4 years, they have redefined homelessness, not necessarily to be what we used to perceive as homelessness, which now we perceive or is now we identify as unsheltered. If
Mhm.
somebody's couch surfing, if
They wouldn't
somebody's-
be considered unsheltered under that
correct, but they
definition.
would be considered homeless.
Under
Under
other federal definitions, but not
Yes.
under HUD.
Right, under federal definitions, if you don't live in a home with a relative, in many cases, you're considered homeless, but you are not considered unsheltered.
Yes.
And this came from a lot of the issues with federal funding dealing with state of California is where they had to rewrite a lot. And so I just wanted to make sure that we keep a bright line of definition between homeless and unsheltered. As far as
So-
that's concerned.
So those with unsheltered homelessness, what I'm really seeing the problem is if you want to combat unsheltered homelessness, you have to have a system that meets the needs of the homelessness population in general. You need to have permanent solutions that they can be connected with to exit those solutions. And so
And I think everybody on this committee agrees with you 100% on
Mhm.
that. But that's the reason when we talk about funds, where the funds need to go,
mhm,
we have to be careful to make sure that we are addressing the particular issue, whether that issue is homelessness or whether that issue is unsheltered homelessness? Because those are two entirely different environments.
They are, and I think that we have, as a youth action board, created comprehensive ideas about the directions we need to move forward to be able to reach the particular needs of youth experiencing unsheltered homelessness, to become sheltered, have that temporary place until they go to a permanent solution, as well as the whole spectrum. So it's really a whole system of different resources that we're going to need to be able to utilize more collaboratively to be equal to sum of more of our parts, but really guided by those moving through those systems, because there are gaps that social workers or people who are trying to provide these services aren't really understanding as they're trying to tackle the complexity of these situations, being paid not very much, but also just there are gaps that only people with lived experience can help us move forward. And so the accountability, if we're talking about trying to make our federal funding more, or state funding more accountable to the outcomes that we're wishing to see, it really needs to be working alongside people with lived experience through a continuous quality improvement process to really improve how these systems are able to respond to individuals moving through these systems. That is the solution we need.
And I agree with that last statement 100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Gomez, and to your knowledge, how much money is coming from the state or for the programs that you've been talking about? How many of them do you, in your knowledge, are funded through the state, through this body, versus through our federal government?
So I am not as knowledgeable about that. I believe you guys talked through DCA in your previous Senate hearing, who would be the expert on that. But there are state programs such as, I think it's ZVHDD comes through some of the state programming, access to those wraparound services. A lot has to do with state funding. I'm not exactly sure how all those grants work, particularly on the line by line.
Ms. Gomez, I apologize for not pronouncing your name right a while ago. Thank you for that very informed testimony.
Okay,
Thank you.
have a wonderful day, guys.
Make sure you send that stuff to us in writing. Denise Wade. I got that one right, didn't I?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Denise Wade. I am a person with lived experience with homelessness and also in long-term recovery from substance abuse disorder and mental illness. I had moved to Atlanta when I was 22, right out of college. And then about a year after I moved here, I realized that addiction was ravaging my life. I had been in denial for a long time. And I had started struggling with mental illness when I was at the age of 15 and going in and out of hospitals. But somehow through all that, I was able to get a college degree and come to Atlanta. From the ages of 15 to 25, I was in and out of 10 different psychiatric hospitals and rehabs. And it wasn't until I started to go for the help that I needed that I actually became unhoused. I realized I needed help. My roommates were kicking me out because of my crazy behavior of my using. And I called around. I was trying to find somewhere to go with limited income. And it wasn't until somebody from a 12-step meeting that I attended told me about a recovery house on the west side of Atlanta to go to. I went there, and about 5 months later, I was discharged from that program because of a suicide attempt, and they couldn't handle my mental health issues. So I remember sleeping on a mat on the floor at Gateway during the winter when there was no space, not having anywhere to go during the day and just hanging around downtown. Eventually, I was able to get into a rehab that was with a very skilled case manager who had her master's in social work, who really helped me through the process. They were able to get me funds after when I was on my job search to be able to get into an apartment. And what helped me was having a roof over my head, a place to store my medicine, a stable place that I could wake up in the morning and take a shower so I could feel confident to go to a job interview or work. A place to charge my phone, a place to store my important documents. From there, I was able to start working and stabilize my mental health and go to regular 12-step meetings and start their journey to healing. Since then, I've lived in Africa, I've gotten my master's in public health, and now I'm a project manager for homeless outreach and diversion for Partners for Home. And I deal specifically with the unsheltered population. Part of what I'm in charge of right now is helping to close down encampments that the Mayor Dickens, the city of Atlanta, has marked off as they want to have them closed down by the end of the year. We've closed 4, and our approach is to compassionately close these encampments, making sure that people in the encampments have housing solutions to go to. And so for me, housing ends homelessness. We do need affordable housing. And as we know, the economy and inflation, it's making it harder and harder for the working class and the lower class to make it. And I believe we're going to see higher numbers of homelessness on the streets, just to be honest. We also could expand our low barrier and no barrier shelters. So there's so many barriers for some of these shelters for people to get into, is that they would rather camp on the street. And also housing solutions that do not re-traumatize people and are appropriate for their specific situations. One gap that I see is lack of day shelters in Atlanta. I think, of course, the folks coming in from the suburbs, downtown Atlanta, they see all the homeless people hanging out and they don't like it. But if we had day shelters where people could access resources and case managers and, computers, I think that would really help. Also, the big thing I see right now is we need higher pay for social service workers. There's so much turnover right now and lack of staffing in our homeless services in Atlanta. And I believe a part of it is because of the lack of pay. And then you just get more and more turnover, and we aren't able to attract people with high expertise in this area. And so lastly, I want to just touch on strengthening the behavioral health system. From my personal experience, try to navigating it back in the day, and then now being housed and insured, both has been very challenging in Georgia to navigate. There's worsening acuity of mental health on the streets in Atlanta. And there's a lack of urgent crisis care and the ability for outreach teams to connect with mental health professionals that are trained to go out with them and deal with some of these crises. It's not only frustrating for the providers for accessing mental health services, but even more so for the people on the streets that do want to take care of their mental health. That's all I have.
Excellent testimony. One question, you said the mayor is closing the encampments.
Mhm.
These people, I'd like to get what Senator Roberts said. We're going to focus back on unsheltered again. These are unsheltered people, these
Yes.
closing encampments, right?
Yes.
Where do you see those people going?
So our approach as Partners for Home and the compassionately closing them is we have outreach workers going to the identified encampment that needs to be closed at least a month before closure, getting familiar with the community, meeting people, knowing who is actually out there. And then from there, we create a by name list of everybody we know is there.
So it's not the city of Atlanta doing this. This is your organization. These
So
independent organizations.
I'm actually a City of Atlanta employee.
That's what I'm trying to get to. Yeah.
Partners for Home is funded by city, state, and federal funds.
Right.
When Partners for Home was developed, Kasim Reed dedicated 2 in-kind employees from the city to Partners for Home. So I'm technically a city employee, but I work for Partners for Home. And so, yes, we have a different funding, and we've closed 4 encampments. We take people that we know that have been in the encampments to a motel. And from there, they're working with a case manager to get into rapid rehousing, which is a long-term permanent solution.
Yeah, please. You said y'all have closed 4 encampments so far.
Mm-hmm.
How many souls did this impact that were living in these camps?
We have reached out to 185 people total, and 145 we were able to provide with services. Others declined services or disappeared.
Okay, disappeared.
Mhm.
When they disappeared, did they disappear because they were no longer allowed to encamp where they were encamped?
When they hear that an encampment closure is coming up, some people just move to a different encampment somewhere else.
Okay. And again, we had somebody from the city come in and explain the definition of compassion, and that was where I had an issue with.
Mhm.
So give me, what does compassionately relocate somebody in an encampment mean? If we're talking about, and you and I both agree, I think your background, my background, and others on these committee understand the acute issue with mental health issues of many of those unsheltered, many of those choosing to live unsheltered or in encampments on the street. So explain to me what your definition of compassionate is, and is there a matrix used when you go in to evaluate these individuals that determine where they go and whether they are basically allowed to disappear, or whether they want to be fed into another system here in the city?
Yeah, that's a great question. So historically, I'm not sure about Atlanta, but across the country, they have homeless sweeps where you have,
I'm only focusing on the city of Atlanta.
yeah, but I'm saying historically in the country,
I'm well aware of that.
and I'm leading up to my definition of compassion.
Right, that's exactly right.
I'm
Yeah.
leading up to my definition.
Thank
So that's what I'm saying. So you have these sweeps, homeless sweeps, they tell people leave, get your stuff, and they trash whatever's left. Compassionate means we're out there at least a month in advance, building those relationships, getting to know people, preparing them that there is going to be a closure so that they can start making alternate decisions. If they want to go to the motel and get permanent housing, they can work with our case manager. If they'd like to go to shelter, we can provide that, or diversion funds for, shorter term.
What if they refuse all that and say they're not leaving?
And some people do, but we have no control over that. We cannot, force somebody. So
Okay,
we
so-
continue
so-
to have outreach workers go out and build those relationships and build trust with them.
So any of the encampments that have been moved and any of the unsheltered that have been moved, and once they've been moved, where structures have been placed to prevent them from coming back and laying down, whether it's hard landscape or whether it's changing. or
That's
any
what
of-
we're working with DPW and GDOT on
Okay,
right
if you'll
now.
let me get to the end of my
Mhm.
question, I appreciate it. If you go out there and you do that, is that part of the plan? In other words, are these public properties that y'all are trying to protect? Or are these private properties, or is it both?
They're public properties,
Okay.
and that's why the city has target those.
Okay, and so do y'all have an estimate on, you said y'all have closed 4 encampments, which impacted
Mhm,
185 individuals,
mhm.
and 145 you were able to come to be a part of it. So 40, I assume, were the ones that chose to move elsewhere and disappear.
Mhm.
So how many more encampments are there that y'all are currently looking at?
We have 6 more before the end of the year. Most likely it'll end up being 4 that we close before the end of the
Okay, and
year.
of those 6, what's the total population of the 6?
I would say about 200.
Okay. And where are y'all at in the stages of looking at those 6? And I understand that 2, you're thinking y'all are not going to be able to deal with prior to the end of the year, but of those, where are y'all at in the stages of engaging with these individuals?
We have an encampment closing next week. I've had a team out there for the last month and a half building relationships. We have motel rooms on board ready for them next week. And also we're getting shelter beds.
Okay, and the hotel rooms, where are these at?
Right now we have Motel 6 on Candler Road.
Okay, and how many rooms are at this particular hotel?
108,
Okay, and how many of them do y'all have leases on?
all of them.
All 108? What's the budgetary impact on the taxpayers for the hotel and the 100?
That's beyond my job scope.
Okay,
Catherine,
so you don't know?
no.
Okay, that's good. That's, the right answer is never the wrong answer.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ms. Ward, you
Wade.
mentioned-
Wade.
Ms. Wade, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, Ms. Wade. You mentioned that the solution would be get more day shelters.
That's a
That's-
proposed idea that I had, yeah.
About how many do we have now? Do we have?
As far as I know, there may be a couple shelters that have,
Just a
doors open during the day, but not to the general public,
Uh-huh.
just to people that stay there at night.
Okay, good.
Yeah, 0.
No, he's got some.
Two different questions, just for the record. I think the limitation on the ability, just so you can confirm for folks coming in the encampment program, is housing.
Yes,
just for the record. Then
Very
we have
much.
plenty of people who want to go into housing. It's the question of getting them the housing.
correct.
Second question, you mentioned in your testimony that it sounded like the first step out of being homeless was the gateway. That's where you ended up. And from there you got service there. The gateway is just down the street here. I
Mhm.
wonder if you could explain what is it that the gateway offered you that was appealing? It's a well-known institution and maybe on the way to recovery.
Well, actually, I just stayed at Gateway, but I was able to connect with somebody from my 12-step program who then helped refer me to a residential treatment program that I went to with a very knowledgeable licensed social worker who was able to connect me to the services that I needed in housing.
Thank you.
Yeah, just real quick. I wanted to follow up. She made me think of something. So
Can I-
I'd ask before you say, yeah. Something the senator made me think of on the shelters. How many low and no barrier shelters are you familiar with that are currently in the city of Atlanta?
Very few, maybe like 3.
3, or the ones you're thinking of, are they privately operated?
The ones I'm thinking about are Gateway as low barrier, and that's funded through HUD and
So
different
it's public
funds.
funding.
Yeah.
Now, and I understand, that the barriers are a lot of times deal with substance abuse and things of that nature. And then some behaviors are completely unacceptable, violence against cohabitants
Correct.
and other things like that. But the low and no barriers, how many high barrier shelters would you say are in the city of Atlanta? An estimate, if you don't know for sure, or are there any that you're familiar with?
Oh, I don't know the total shelters here, but I would say at least 10.
Okay. And what's the primary barrier at those 10 high barriers that you would think? Is it substance abuse?
No, it's like some require identification, some require COVID testing, some require people to be sober. There is also sometimes they have religious programming that people have to follow in order to stay there. And some, that doesn't always, people don't believe the same thing. So
Right. So are there any programs out there that would provide these individuals with identification that could help them get in? And are they mandating that the individuals come in with COVID testing to show that they're clear? And also, I would assume with hepatitis and other things that are issues, also tuberculosis and stuff like that. So they're asking for that kind of stuff.
yeah, some shelters, it's required to get in. Some will give you a few days there and allow you to get those things. It just depends on the different shelters.
And are they running into barriers of going to the health department, which is funded by the state, to get these tests done so that they can get back and get into these shelters?
I know what I was doing. I was actually a homeless outreach case manager before I took the project management position. And I know it was hard to schedule TB tests and different things like that with the state.
Okay, thank you.
One final. I want to revisit Senator Robertson's numbers between 145 and 185. You said some of those people disappear. Is it possible that some of those folks are in jail or in hospital or so all 40 of them you wouldn't say necessarily have moved to another encampment? Some of
No.
them.
Yeah, everybody has different situations, but I'm just, those are some of the things I've seen. So,
Thank you, Ms. Wade.
thank you.
We're going to change up a little bit here, if you don't mind. I'm going to call Dr. Keith Slaughter up.
Thank you. I am F. Keith Slaughter. I am the pastor of Beloved Community Church of Atlanta. I'm a professor at the Interdenominational Theological Seminary Center in the area of the psychology of religion and pastoral care. I'm also the CEO and founder of the Beloved Community Development Corporation. Everyone that has spoken has moved me deeply, and it matched with the feeling that I came here with after just having an experience with a sister who is a member of our church who is homeless and who was just asking me for a ride to go and check into a shelter so she can come back later and go. Well, I saw her at our day shelter, and I've heard day shelter spoken of here, and that was an idea that came to us when the COVID pandemic began, and we moved into action and created space for persons who are unsheltered and homeless to come. But I want to introduce a term that has not been used in this space, and which is prevalent among members in the Atlanta community especially, and it's called bando culture. My church is a stone's throw away from here in the Pittsburgh community. Gentrification has ravaged our community in a way that has displaced many persons who were sheltered and who did have homes. And so what we attempted to do is fill that gap that was created by the city and whatever the powers that be were that forced many of our community residents into homelessness. So what we do is provide the cell phone charging stations, the computer stations, a place to shower, clothing, food we feed. We serve over 200 meals, 200 or 300 meals per week. Or we serve on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So, and we serve between 100 and 120 people each day. We also have a food bank, a food pantry where we serve between 120 and 150 families per week with 30-pound boxes of food. My biggest fear is irrelevant as a pastor. And so what we did is do an assessment of the community, and we found that people were living in homes that were considered to be abandoned, but people were living there just without the benefit of utilities. And so we created a program that would serve those people and give them what they need to make the transition from being sheltered to being unsheltered, just a little more humane. Our funding comes from what I am able to raise. Georgia Act has been helpful to us, and we did receive a stadium grant that helped us to renovate a church, a small church that was abandoned when the pandemic began. And we were able to purchase it, and we used the grant to renovate it and create the day shelter. And so we operate a couple of days a week now, because it was really a compromise with my members. I wanted to open a full shelter. And they were like, it's only 2 or 3 of us and you're going to kill us. But we compromised and created a day shelter. It's operating, it's functional, and I am proud to be able to make some difference in the lives of some of the people who have been thrust into homelessness by no fault of their own, by being unable to pay the property taxes on the homes that they inherited. They find themselves being homeless.
Are you seeing more unsheltered in your outreach?
Oh, without a doubt. Actually, today, see, as it gets colder, then people show up more. Folks will come for the meals each day, each time we serve them. But on today, I noticed people inside. We have television set up. We had computers, cell phone charging station, and other services. We also pay a case manager to help people get their IDs. And that's another service that we offer. And again, we do it out of our own fundraising. And we need money to do it. Just a couple of weeks ago, dear sister, Dr. Brown and Reverend Malone, actually, who are there on the wall, They actually gave us money because our utilities were cut off, and they helped us to get them back on. So it's a day-to-day struggle to fund it, but we do it because we feel called to do it.
Wow.
Say just one comment. Thank you for being here, Dr. Slaughter. I've been at your facility.
Yes, ma'am. I've been to
Good
your office. Yes.
You do good work and we appreciate it so much. I noticed there are, in the Pittsburgh community, there are several churches in the area, and I know many of them might have some type of food pantry, or they might have they provide some food boxes at times, but I think you probably about the only one that has a day shelter where you help so many people there.
We're consistent. We've done it we've served every week for the last 7 years. So we have a track record. And so people in the community trust us, and they know that we'll provide service and do so with a sense of humanity. And so we're proud of that reputation.
That's good. And I think some of the other churches send people to you.
Yes, ma'am. We collaborate.
Very good.
Yes,
Thank you kindly.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Same, Cheryl Bird, please. She's from out of town. Miss Cheryl, you're Albany lady, Gardery County. Welcome.
Thank you all. It is Sherelle Bird.
Sherelle.
Sherelle.
Thank
Yes. And I'm also joined by Trista Wiggins, who is on the Zoom right now. And I want to yield 2 minutes of my time, the last 2 minutes of my time to her, if that's okay. So I remember, and I'm going to share something that people don't know about me, but I was actually a homeless college student here in downtown Atlanta, attending Georgia State University, and spent my junior semester, one semester right here, downtown Atlanta at Georgia State University. I remember washing up in Pendergrass Library and taking naps in the library, and eventually staying in a dorm with a friend of mine for about 3 months. And so I'm proud to be able to face that memory today and sit before each of you as the executive director and founder of Sawega Rising. I'm here to advocate for what's happening in Southwest Georgia. So yes, Sawega, which is an acronym for Southwest Georgia. Yeah, Sawega Rising. So, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm actually here today to talk about the fact that 59% of Americans are one paycheck or one emergency away from homelessness here in America. And I remember my mom always telling me to save for a rainy day. And right now, unfortunately, coming to the state is a tropical storm. And I'm not talking about Nicole. I'm talking about homelessness that's about to hit rural Southwest Georgia. As you all recall, Albany was one of number 4 in the world for incidences of COVID-19 per population. And we were devastated by the pandemic economically. We are still struggling to recover. We received the CARES Act funding, the ARPA funding, all of those things that came down to communities, we received those. Unfortunately, our organization has done quite a bit of advocacy to ensure that that money is spent for recovery. But we found that many community leaders are not doing that. That money is going towards infrastructure and payroll. And so what's coming to our community is going to be devastating because we simply have not prepared to mitigate the COVID-19 recovery as needed. Also, we're seeing inflation at rates that we have not seen since prior to the pandemic. And I'm speaking of housing costs and rents going up exponentially. The cost of food is very high. The cost of gas is high. And now we actually have some of our partners right now protesting Georgia Power for the rates of utilities that are also about to spike. And so these are the types of factors that are really impacting the lives of rural Georgians in a way that's going to cause a serious wave of homelessness in rural communities. But what's not increasing is livable wages. And the fact that these people simply cannot catch up due to the impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic. Families are struggling. And I know we receive stimulus checks. I know people receive all sorts of funding, but we need to get our communities to a place where we don't have to rely on those stimulus checks, that people are able to make livable wages where they can take care of their families. I received, and so as we're looking at this, we actually were contacted by some property managers, Trista Wiggins, who desperately pleaded for the fact that in the next 45 to 60 days, they will be evicting over 37 families from properties. She is just the tip of the iceberg. We've also gotten calls from all over Southwest Georgia, Cuthbert, Donaldsonville, Baker County, where the same thing is about to happen to families that are renting, as well as families that are homeowners that are facing foreclosures as well. And we're talking about not just families, but this is also single mothers, seniors, and children that are going to be homeless within the next 45 to 60 days if we don't act soon. And rural Southwest Georgia, unfortunately, is not like Atlanta. We do not have the infrastructure nor the funding to be able to handle the crisis that's heading our way. So I want to yield the rest of my time to Ms. Trista Wiggins. She actually reached out to our leaders in South Georgia with a desperate plea for some assistance. And so we're right now working on some short-term solutions. There's not very many of those. And we're also working on a long-term plan. I saw Commissioner Young, which is one of the people that's joining us in that, to create some sort of long-term solutions that will help us to address this very huge crisis that's headed our way. So Ms. Wiggins, if she's available.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you guys for hearing me out. My name is Trista Wiggins. I'm a regional supervisor in the South Georgia, North Florida region. My biggest concern right now are my South Georgia properties. Right now, between just five properties in Albany, Georgia, we're looking at over 50 families that are going to be evicted. That is just 5 of the 40 plus apartment communities in Albany, Georgia. I cannot tell you the number of families who have been affected. These families that I'm talking about are the ones who pre-COVID were 2-income families and through no fault of their own became 1-income families. Through COVID, they had, if a family member got COVID, you had to take the mandatory 14 days quarantine. After the mandated government pay, where employers had to pay those people for 14 days, once that ended, the mandated 14 days did not end. We saw countless residents who had to take those 14 days off, whether it be for themselves, their spouses, their children, and that's 2 weeks of pay that put them behind. These same families have been struggling nonstop to get caught up since that time. We had families who all applied for the GRA program, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And while that was a great program, from what I witnessed, it was very mismanaged and lacked any kind of accountability process. We have applications that were never even assigned a caseworker. We have applications where my managers would email caseworkers through their portal that they designed, and the messages would go unanswered. We have some from when this program first started to now that have still never been processed. It seems like there was no accountability. There was no structure set up to have someone actually manage this program. When the government mandated that tenants did not have to pay rent, the owners carried that burden. There's not been a lot of relief for the owners who have had to continue paying their mortgage payments, their tax. There's not been relief for them, but that's not what I'm concerned about. My concern is the families who, through no fault or very little fault of their own, are now facing being evicted from their homes and being homeless. We have done everything that we can do on our level as far as reaching out to the local government for assistance. At this point, we're reaching out to you guys to help us, because me as a regional supervisor, I'm at a loss. I want to help the families, but at the same time, I have to work for my ownership group. My company and the ownership groups that I work for prided themselves on wanting to help their residents while still being fair. Property owners have, as I mentioned, they sell their mortgage, insurance, and taxes, and these things will only be paid if the resident's rent is paid. Prior to COVID, the properties were stable and residents were not having the issues that they're now facing. In my opinion, there should be some type of emergency funding that requires the families to attend a sort of class, such as a budgeting or finance, or maybe even a class that requires them to learn a life skill So that way they're not just getting a handout, they're actually getting a hand up. I strongly recommend that if something like this happens, the funds are paid directly to the landlord or the provider and not to the resident. That was another issue that we noticed through the Georgia Rental Assistance Program, is that residents were paid directly, and you can't always trust them to do what they're supposed to do. While majority of them did, not everyone did. Sorry, I was trying to get everything together. When COVID-19 hit our country, it was affected so many lives. Two of my properties have roughly 40 to 60 residents at those two properties alone that are facing eviction that we're trying our best to work with. These residents, as Sherelle mentioned, are one income, senior, single family, single parent homes. There just needs to be some kind of emergency funding for these families. And at this point, we're asking that you guys can help us help them. Not all landlords, I promise, are bad. We actually want to help our residents. We don't want to have another empty apartment, another empty home. We want to try and keep these families in these homes. We just need help from you guys at this point. And I think that kind of wrapped up my 2 minutes.
Hey, yes, ma'am. That's it. We have one question, Sarah Dugan.
I do have one question for you. You said paid directly to the landlord. For how long?
Well, the GRA program was set up to pay the residents up to 18 months of their rent. And we noticed through the Georgia Rental Assistance Program, not every case was done as it was supposed to be. Some caseworkers paid the residents directly, and they in turn were supposed to pay the landlord for the rent.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
did not always happen.
I'm with you on that. I'm
Yes,
with you
sir.
on that. You're asking to go forward.
Right.
Kind of create a similar type program. The difference is who it's paid to. At 18 months from now, if we do that, what happens?
And see, that's why I suggested if we do go that route, there be some kind of classes or some kind of life skill that these residents or these people need to learn. That way they're not just getting more free money. In my opinion, there should be requirements that they must meet so they can get back on their feet. So they're not dependent on this life long term. That's one thing I've recommended. I've noticed is some of the people, they do not have a lot of skills. Like if they were a 2-income household and then COVID hit, and let's say the patriarch of the family was no longer able to work, or, God forbid he passed away, the matriarch of the family may have never worked a day in her life. So she's just trying to get by. And we do have families like that we're working with. And
Absolutely. I understand that.
And
I'm
if I
going to
could
double
add-
check, but I think you can't do a work or a skills-based requirement on government funding. But I'll check into that.
okay, I wasn't 100% sure. That was just something that I had
Yeah.
thought would work.
It's not a bad idea. I'm just not sure we can do that.
Yeah, and I want to
Yes,
add
sir.
as well, we are working with organizations like United Way, Strive to Thrive, and other organizations that work with people when they find themselves in this situation. So this is like a huge collaborative effort with our political leaders, our property managers, as well as nonprofit organizations that are trying to create solutions. And I also want to say, these are not people that are like, we're not talking about just people that are on public assistance. These are people that are working every single day and still can't catch up and still can't make up the gap from the pandemic. So I just want us to be clear that these are people that have jobs, that have been working to pay their rent, but they still just cannot catch up. So.
Right.
We have a Senator Roberts.
Miss Wiggins, this is Senator Robertson. I'm curious, how many properties are you responsible for?
At this moment right now, I have 6 in Albany, Georgia. About 6 months ago, I had a total of 13, but some of them did sell off to other owners. That has been a big thing since COVID. A lot of properties are changing hands. So at the moment right now, I've got 6.
And who are the owners of these properties?
I can send that info directly to you if I get your email. If you get Miss Sherelle, I can send you all of the ownership groups.
Okay, and these are private investors?
They're a mix of private investors. Yes, sir.
Okay, so none of this is public housing. It's all
No,
private?
sir. This is all private. None of this is low income tax housing. None of this is government mandated housing. It is all conventional housing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
In Albany, for example, how many unsheltered people do you think are in Daugherty County roughly? Unsheltered?
I think around the last homeless count, I think it was around 300 range in Dougherty County.
300.
Right.
Okay.
What's the population?
77,000. in the city, 91 in the county.
There's this, I won't get a lot of conversation here, but I mean, do you get more from the city or you get more from the county in regard for government help?
More from the city.
Okay.
More from the city.
Okay. Good testimony. Thank you.
Thank
Kelly.
you.
Thank you.
Oh, and if I can just add one thing, thank you for considering Southwest Georgia in these conversations as well. I know we talk a lot about Atlanta.
It is
Great
not
testimony
indigenous.
from Atlanta.
Homelessness is not, I know
It's-
shelter is not indigenous to Atlanta.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's talk to Commissioner Hope Harmon out of Ben Hill County. She's here since that's one of my districts there, and welcome. Welcome, Commissioner. I know we have no unsheltered in Ben Hill County, right?
Congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
Congratulations. We're really excited for you to be our senator and work with you going forward. So I'm Commissioner Hope Harmon. I am Vice Chair of the Ben Hill County Board of Commissioners. So just to give you some perspective, some numbers on Ben Hill County, we sit at about 17,000 population from the last census. We have 1,700 households with a less than $15,000 a year income. Yeah, but so in Ben Hill County, we have 17,000 in our population. We have 1,700 households that have income of less than 15,000 a year. So I just want to make some key points. So the biggest issue we're having is not so much with people we have people who travel who are unsheltered a lot. So what we've seen more is people who are sheltered, working, and homeless. So what we've seen a lot of times is people who are living with family members. So you may have 2 or 3 families living together in a 3-bedroom household. And when defects is called, they're going to take those children, you know, things like that. So we're seeing persons living in hotels, motels, who are paying by the week. Which means they don't have access to things like a stove. So all they have is a microwave and a hot plate. We have people living in tents. They just find a spot and pitch them up a tent in a wooded area, and there they go. They live in the tents. And we've had sheriff's offices ride by these locations several times and see these people just living in tents, and we have no idea sometimes where these people come from. So we have a lot of people living in cars, traveling in RVs. We had several RVs that just get to Ben Hill County, run out of gas, and they're there. So now we have to, you know, figure something out for them, figure out some resources. So we have no shelters in Ben Hill County. We have no shelters within an hour and 30 minutes of our county. We have, you know, we really have no way of really gauging how many people that are suffering from unsheltered homelessness it is. But we know how many people go to our food bank every day, how many people go to, it's called the Christian Kitchen. And we know the issues that they face there in feeding people daily. And also, you know, we in Ben Hill County, our utilities is a part of a MEAG, and we have one of the highest utility rates and probably in the state of Georgia. And so they're always having issues with keeping utilities on and getting funding and things like that. We have mental health issues. A lot of the people that we see, behavioral health is 45 minutes away from Ben Hill County, the closest behavioral health center. So many of the parents became homeless during COVID due to waiting on rental assistance. Some families that I personally work with were denied after 6 months to a year of waiting to be told no, only to not be given a reason they were told no. And only for us never to ever have met our processor through DCA. We have never seen our processor in Ben Hill County with DCA. He goes to larger counties, but does not think it necessary to come to Ben Hill County. We don't have many Section 8 homes or affordable housing, and that's the issue with you. In smaller counties, we have to weigh the options because we have to bring in a tax revenue in order for the county to operate. Affordable housing, which one thing you cannot do. There's no property taxes there, right? So you're really limited on how much you can do with the affordable housing and mixture in the county. And the latest apartment complex that we did do, that DCA did help fund, a year later, there was black mold in the apartment complex. and water damage and water leaks. So here we go again with more people who are being unsheltered and having to live with family members. Another issue we're seeing is we have a great deal of people coming from Florida to South Georgia. What's happening is these people are getting on affordable housing list. They will get on everybody in a region's affordable housing list. And when somebody moves out, instead of somebody from Ben Hill County being able to move into that affordable housing unit, you have somebody coming from all the way from Florida. We have U-Hauls coming out of Florida. And I'm just like, it just amazes me. So that is another issue we're seeing. And I actually talked to our manager at our housing authority, and that is something that she mentioned to me. Just to give like some context on some things that we're dealing with. You know, we of course, you know, we have 159 counties in Ben County. Only 8 received the federal dollars, 8 counties. So the rest of us are left at the mercy of the state. So when we look at like the American Rescue Plan Act money that came down through DCA, well, DeKalb County got $25 million from DCA of money that was supposed to come to South Georgia that we never saw. Those 25 million were reported to help 3,000 residents. They didn't say households, they just said residents on their website. So that same 25 million would have paid rent and utilities for every property in Ben Hill County for a full year. It's about impact at this point. We're not receiving any assistance at this point. I cannot name you one resident in Ben Hill County that received rental assistance through DCA. The last time I heard from Commissioner Chris Nunn was in July, and he just stopped responding to my emails. And so, you know, it's kind of a thing of what do you do in South Georgia, considering that you all know how property taxes work. As your expenses and revenues get closer and closer, and that's what's happening in South Georgia, you just don't have the extra money to give to the shelters or to give to the nonprofits in those ways. And of course, you know, we want to help, but it's a very hard thing when you also have to make sure that your employees are paid, that you have the county, all the constitutional services that you're supposed to provide. And so those are some of the issues that we're facing and just running into right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. I guess, do you all have any kind of budget in your city for for the unsheltered? Have y'all done any kind of budget for them? You have to do it on your own now, city?
So because we're not a consolidated government, so the city and county operate separately. So I can pretty much say probably no. I can give you a no. City of Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald. Yeah.
City of
Fitzgerald. I'm sorry,
Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald.
County commissioner.
Yeah. Do you think that when you say homeless now, I'll go back to unsheltered, roughly guessing how many unsheltered people are in, say, I'm assuming Fitzgerald where most of them can congregate, right?
They congregate in the county as well, because we have like we have areas in the county where we find them because we have rivers, because you know some travel along the rivers. And so what we found is random people just pitching up tents out on rivers.
Who else have you applied to for money besides DCA? I mean, you say not getting any funding, any of these other programs.
No, I think it's just been the individuals that have tried to apply for funding through DCA, and we never get answers through DCA. We've tried to help those people. We've even reached out to DCA to figure out, is there a way to help our constituents apply? The group that was supposed to be covering Ben Hill County, after I asked the question, I found out they weren't doing their job. So, you know, it's kind of a thing of the more you ask questions, the more you see those things just aren't happening. So a lot of the funding, you know, nonprofits do have to apply for. We're limited on the amount of nonprofits that we have in our county as well. So it's just a very dire situation. We do not have a united way either, or things like that.
Sure, Jarvis.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner, you're talking about multiple families living in the same home. Is this in the county or within the city limits?
Both.
Okay. Are there ordinances within the county that prohibit multiple families from living in the same home?
Sometimes you just have to turn a blind eye to things.
Well, no, my question is, are there ordinances that make it a violation?
No, none that I know of.
Okay, because I live in a county that is not a consolidated government, and I know that within some cities there are limits, but in the county I live in, there's not.
No.
If a grandmother and a mother and all these
Right.
family members. So my concern is DFACS normally does not get involved in families living in homes together unless there's some kind of violation when it comes to the child, whether it's the condition or something like that. Usually it's not the multiplier, as long as the child has a safe, secure, dry and clean place to live. So I was a little concerned about that, but there are no ordinances within Ben Hill County that prohibit multiple families.
No, they are not, but there has been a uptick, from my understanding, in talking to families with the amount of children that can stay in one room. So if you have 2 or 3 families living in a 3-bedroom household and you have, you know, or you don't have a situation where maybe you're living in a 2-bedroom household and you can't separate the boys from the girls and things like that. Sometimes they will start questioning those things. We've seen it happen.
And that's what I'm saying. For DFACS to be involved, there has to be a complaint.
Of
made,
course.
Because DFACS can't go around, knock on people's doors and ask to go into their house. So I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that right and making sure that the state wasn't overstepping its authority.
I won't say the state is overstepping their authority, but I know that there's a lot of people that are just having a really, really difficult time. And I understand they have a job to do as well. So I wouldn't say that the state is overstepping their boundaries, because we work closely with DFACS as well. We work closely, really, really closely with DFACS as well.
Are other communities in our area down there in our world, do you think your other cohorts that you deal with, maybe your other colleagues, like in, say, for example, Coffee County or Irwin County, are they experiencing the same thing you're finding out?
Yes, they are. I know a city commissioner in Coffee County that has been applying kind of relentlessly to DCA because they really want a homeless shelter in Coffee County. And I was thinking about how great that would be. I mean, it's not in Ben Hill County, but Coffee County may be able to handle something like that a little better than we could. And that might be a great thing that we could, transition people over there if need be. So yes, they are having the same issues.
Anybody? Thank you. Anybody? Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
One of the roles of your legislators is to help you interface with the commissioners for state departments. And so I'm just wondering if your senator and your representative, if you've had an opportunity to reach out to them.
I want to ask that question all the way out. I just want you to know.
Okay, so yes, of course.
I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, but I would really do want to offer that to you, that is a
Back over me.
resource.
We're one of those counties that when redistricting happened, we lost our senator. So we now have a new senator in Senator Sumner's. So Tyler Harper, who is the new agriculture commissioner, is our former senator. So we had a great working relationship with Tyler, and we're looking forward to having a great relationship with Senator Sumner's.
Love to answer. You too, sweetie. One more question.
Just a follow-up to that. So, also you can engage with senators from other areas, like if they stole $25 million from you. I would call the senator that represents that area.
Thank you.
25 million.
Other
The county only got $25 whole million.
We're talking real money, right?
Real money.
That was excellent. Thank you kindly. All the best to folks in Fitzgerald.
Wow.
This is getting really good, y'all.
Getting slap happy over here.
Emily Lippert, did I say it right? Emily Lippert.
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm 19 years old. I became homeless back January of last year. I experienced homelessness for about 9 months.
Where are you homeless? Where were you homeless?
So basically, my homelessness came from DV. I had to flee abusive relationship, and I didn't have anywhere to go. And a lot of the places in my state were denying me, and I didn't know what to do. And my sister lived down in Georgia at the time, so I crossed state lines, and I was homeless in Georgia I've been in Georgia for 9 months. Well, I guess 11 months now.
And what part of Georgia?
So the first shelter I got into was in Cumming, Georgia. And I would say that in Cumming, Georgia, they are not adequately connected with the resources that you need. I only got resources from that shelter and I didn't get the things that I need. If I would have gotten the things I would have needed, the time length that I would have been homeless would have been extremely shortened. So I wasn't able to get in touch with anybody who was able to put me on the housing queue or the housing list. And if I would have been out of homelessness within under 3 months.
What were those things? Just curious.
So getting in touch with the housing queue is like the people, I can't remember exactly the questionnaires that they ask you and stuff, but it shows how at risk you are for homelessness and stuff like that. And I wasn't able to get connected with anybody. And in Forsyth County, you can only go through people in Forsyth County. You're not allowed to go to any other county for help. So I wasn't able to get any help like that until I moved to Fulton County, which was the second shelter I lived in was in Fulton County. I lived in Atlanta. And at that shelter, I was able to get connected to those resources. However, I had to deal with a lot more. The funding was less. I moved into a shelter and I stayed in a room with 12 different people. I never knew if I was safe or not. The capacity of the shelter was 12, but so that was all the people that were in there. But I also lived with black mold. I lived with rats. I lived with bugs. And even when I moved into their longer program, I still lived in a place where there was cockroaches and I dealt with that all the time. And I was able to get connected to more resources, but it still wasn't helpful because when I did move into the other shelters, I would say that the shelter system is very abusive. So especially being someone who's experienced DV and stuff, going back into shelters and you're like, you have a couple options, right? You can go on the streets and you can be homeless and you don't have to deal with any of these people, or you can have a place to stay and you have to deal with the abuse that's given to you. You're seen as subhuman and you're treated as a number. I would say that is the case for a lot of people on the streets as well. They're not able to access these shelters. And when they are, or like when the sweeps happen, also, I am connected with people who have been in the sweeps and stuff like that. They do get moved into motels and stuff like that. But those motels also have black mold and they have issues there. And it's just constant relocation is very stressful and it's deteriorates your mental health and your physical health.
Are you homeless now?
I have stopped being homeless. The only reason I'm not homeless anymore is because I was able to move in with my sister. If I wasn't able to move in with my sister, I would still be experiencing homelessness because being 19 and stuff, I don't have a credit score. I don't have, even working full time, I don't have, like when I was working full time at another place, I was making $15 an hour. I don't make enough money to move in anywhere. So I would say that a livable wage is a huge problem that we have, and I'm able to access higher paying jobs because I have a car, but I have friends that have much less paying jobs, like under $10 an hour. So that is a huge issue with homelessness that we would have to work on is having a higher minimum wage. Extremely. And I know I'm not trying to be rude in any aspect here, but it's just, I would really like to see that because I know that all of you are public servants and senators make $174,000 a year. That's what Google says. That's what online says. Okay, I don't know, but regardless, that's wrong.
Hold on.
Okay, that's wrong. That's wrong.
Don't
But we
worry
make
about
a
it.
livable
Take it
wage.
back in.
Okay, so the answer, so
Okay,
what I
you-
got
you're
was
talking
wrong.
about Senators, like there's 2 in Georgia, United States senators.
Okay,
They make
okay.
that kind of money.
Okay. But anyways, okay. So that was wrong. I just Googled that about 5 minutes ago. I'm not gonna lie. Anyways,
Chances are you make more money than we do. Chances are. Chances are.
say that, do you make a livable wage? Do you make more than $18.75 an hour?
No.
That, yeah. Anyways, there are lots of public there. Okay.
Hey,
Uh-huh.
that was a great diversion. Thank you for that. We like that. Go ahead.
I do have a couple other statistics. Like in 2015, there in one day there was 31,500 adults and children who found refuge in DV shelters. That same day, 12,197 people were denied shelter because there isn't the resources, there isn't the funds. And
Do me a favor, could you give me those numbers? Well, this here?
this is, I think that I'm not exactly sure. I got this off of acf.hhs.gov.
Say those again. I'd love to.
Yep.
Yeah.
In 2015, in one day, over 31,500 adults and children found refuge in DV shelters. That same day, 12,197 people were denied due to lack of shelters and due to lack of funding, staffing, and other resources, including beds. I've been denied quite a few times shelter and access to shelter, and I would have been living in my car if I didn't have my sister sitting with me going down lists. We probably called more than 50 shelters in one day. Also, I don't know if you know, the problem is if you become homeless on the weekend, you're screwed. There's nowhere to go if you become homeless on a weekend. And when I came down here, my sister was also homeless, so there was nowhere for me to go. There was nobody for me to move in with. 1.6 million youth are homeless each year, and 40% of those youth are LGBTQ plus youth, and they only make up 7% of the general population. So I've lived in a women's shelter, and I've lived in a LGBTQ plus youth shelter, and I would say even there's not necessarily a lot of safe places to go as someone who's queer. Even in queer shelters, there is a lot of problems, and a lot of reasons people move out is because there's a lot of like homophobic things that happen there, and it's not a safe place. Some other things that I would say is even the people that I have made connections with that are around my age group are, I would say if they're the people I know, or if they're not homeless, they're on the brink of homelessness at my age group. They're living in houses or places with like 5 other people so they can afford the rent, because nobody's making a livable wage out here.
Assembly, we need to know, if you don't mind,
Uh-huh.
we can't deal with salaries for what people make out there. That's not our jobs. Okay. Our jobs is to try to make sure that the funding that's coming down through state and federal
So
is
I'm
going to the
the proper places.
proper
Okay.
places.
So I would say that I know that, but I also know that I know you're hearing the same thing about the wages over and over again. You have more power than any of us do. So it's not something that is going on with this directly. I know that it's not direct, but it does have direct correlation, and you do have control, not like instant control, but it's something that you can bring up and you can talk to your members about. And that's why I think so many people are urging you to hear us out about that. I would also like to say, I did look up to end homelessness in America, it would cost $20 billion. So if you did the math and you divided that by 50, that's 400 million. And I know that's going to vary from state to state. Obviously, the populations are going to be different, but I know we have the funding for that because we fund Atlanta itself, gives about $248 million to the police each year. In Georgia, I sat through the numbers and GPI.org, and I added it up. Georgia itself puts about $838 million towards the police funds each year. So I know that there's funding there, and I know that
we got to kind of, those numbers are just not something we deal with every day. I want you to understand that. I mean, in the city of Atlanta, what they do is what they do. Hold on just a minute.
Just real quick, you said something early in that I wanted to touch on. When you said the shelter system is abusive and
it is.
Just let me finish real quick. Are you talking about physically abusive, or is it a lot of psychological abuse? And I do understand you said they treat people subhuman, and that's horrific, but I just want to determine, is it physical or is it primarily psychological?
I would say both. When I was at the youth shelter,
In what we're at in
Atlanta,
you can say what county.
In Fulton County and
Fulton?
stuff.
Okay.
There's only 2 youth shelters also. But I know that they still let people work there who've been fired, but there's a worker there that has been fired but still works through the church that the shelter operates through, who has been found guilty of abusing people who live there physically, sexually,
Okay.
sexually having sexual relations with clients there. And also I would say that mentally they are extremely mentally abusive, which I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with any type of abuse, but mental abuse is a huge thing that isn't called out and is totally normalized in society. I've also dealt with a lot of adultism and stuff. Having to give up 60% of my paycheck to the shelters because they don't believe that I can handle my money on my own, having to have an 8 o'clock curfew, and you can't work overnight when you work at shelters like that. They won't let you, even if it means making money, it means having a higher paying job so you would be able to end being homeless. You're not allowed to because it doesn't meet with their shelter standards.
And who operates these youth shelters? Are they
This one,
nonprofits?
the one, yeah. So the one that I was at was not federally funded or in any means. They get all private funds and they get their funds through their thrift store and stuff like that. They don't receive any federal
What was
funds.
it, if you don't mind, and we can talk
Mhm.
offline if you want.
Mhm.
Would you be comfortable giving me the name of that shelter?
I stayed at Lost and Found shelter for a long time, and there is a lot of problems there. And I do believe that also if people at shelters got paid more, that clients wouldn't get treated so poorly because they don't make enough money. And I know relates in a lot of fields, a lot of different fields. If you're not getting paid enough, you're not going to do your job 100%. You know?
But salary should have nothing to do on somebody being abusive. Would you agree with that?
I would extremely agree. I worked in healthcare for a long time.
Right.
100%. Not necessarily a long time,
I
but
just don't want anybody
yeah,
to think we would
yeah.
ever excuse their
Well,
behavior.
yes, it's not an excuse, but
no, I'm
I
not
do
saying you
see
do.
even in healthcare,
Yeah.
even in nursing homes and stuff, you see that people don't get treated how they should and get treated like humans because the workers aren't getting paid enough.
Excellent testimony. Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you very much. Latricia Cheney, I said that right? You're on a break? Absolutely. My apologies. We'll take a 5-minute break, guys. Just hang on just a minute. I know. I know you deal with this. I'd like to hear from you today. It's okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for giving me the privilege to speak before you today. Like we say in the Baptist Church on rural South Georgia, I'm not going to be before you long. I'll leave that to it. I know.
Best testimony, beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. But I am speaking to you today, not as the CEO of Georgia Advancing Communities Together, but as a person with lived experience of housing insecurity. Back in 2012, we talked a lot of things about mental health, mental illness, and substance abuse. None of that applied to me. The market, you may remember back in 2008, the housing market crashed. I've been in housing all of my career. Had a bachelor's degree. Also similar to another person, I was like, oh, that's my story. I had finished a year in my master's program and was unable to find work, had gone through all of my savings. And I also was pregnant with my youngest son, who is now 9. I was 6 months pregnant with him. My older 2 children were 16 and 17 respectively. And I was living here in Metro Atlanta. I wasn't as familiar with any programs and services in DeKalb County. So I got a list from the city of Atlanta because I thought Atlanta's bigger. Atlanta has more resources. As I began to call the various shelters, because I had gotten my notice from the mortgage company that I was being foreclosed, they had worked with me as long as they were going to work with me, and I had no place to go. I was raised by my grandparents. They were both deceased, so I had no safety net. And I was given a choice whether myself being pregnant and my daughter go to a shelter and leave my oldest son out because he was too old to be in a family shelter with us. And I was not going to leave him out. So we had to talk, and we made that decision that we were going to be homeless. We were going to be homeless together. And that's what we did. We were both unsheltered and sheltered. So we lived in our car. Finally was able to scratch up enough money, sell some possessions, get a U-Haul, move back to my hometown, and was able to couch surf. Was able to, had a job making $9 an hour, and lived some time, unbeknownst to the property manager, regional manager there in my office. I had a key. So wherever I could lay my head with my children. And my youngest son, he was born in September of 2013. I did not have a permanent place to stay. But thankfully, through the generosity of others, people, because there was no Partners for Home or anything like that, that the community came together and assisted me. And so that's one thing I could say about Southwest Georgia. We're very resilient people. We come together in the time of need, and the people in my hometown of Cordell, Georgia came to my aid once they found out what was going on. I was able to secure a shotgun house. And if you know what a shotgun house is, you walk through the front and go straight to the back. It was cold and drafty, but it was a room. And then thankfully, public housing was my stabilizing factor. So I went back to school, obtained my master's degree, and was working, and then a job opportunity came up here in Atlanta for me to become the CEO of Georgia Act, and I was chosen. But that experience of being homeless, both sheltered and unsheltered, really changed my outlook. And so when people talk about anxiety, to this day, 2022, I still have anxiety about not having a place to stay. It's one of the reasons why I work so hard. Sometimes I just work 2 to 3 jobs. Sometimes my board gets on to me about working so hard because I know what it's like not to have a place to stay and having people depending on me. And my mission outside of my job is to comfort the disturbed and to disturb the comfortable. And we have gotten too many nonprofits who have gotten comfortable off of homelessness. Poverty is profitable. And my goal is for me not to have a job because we have solved this housing and homelessness issue. That I could go and teach at a college is something I've been wanting to do for years. That's what I want to do. And we have to be intentional about holding these nonprofits that are getting $60 million, $45 million in funding on helping to solve this homeless problem. And I'm just going to tell it like it is. And the lady before me, when she talked about these shelters, I was on a call. I'm gonna finish up because I hear the buzzer. I heard a call. I was on a call last week about a nonprofit who has a hotel, but in the hotel was mold. I heard it with my own ears. I perked up. I said, you have got to be kidding. There were issues with getting people food. Now, if we're going to talk about compassionately closing encampments, let's not put people in a worse situation than the encampment that we closed. Now, I know I'm going to make some enemies, but that's okay. You know, people hated Jesus, not liking myself to Jesus. But again, I think about those individuals who are like me, because we have so many people who are running these organizations. You could go and visit an encampment, but how do you feel actually being there where that is your home? That is your shelter. When you're too afraid to even go into a shelter, these are things that I'm hearing because of sexual abuse, because of mental abuse, because of those things that's going on. And we cannot continue to turn a blind eye and act like everything is perfect in our system. It is not. And I will close again with the day that our goal with all of us sitting here and all those who are under the sound of my voice today, our goal should be to end unsheltered homelessness permanently. And that I'm saying this, that I will no longer have a job because we have solved the problem. Thank you so much. I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. That was right on the money. Do you think you're in Atlanta and South Georgia?
Correct.
Unsheltered homelessness, is it growing everywhere, or are we holding it? Because everybody we're told is coming down. I want to know.
It is growing everywhere. Of course, it's more prevalent in Atlanta. And when you ask the question about where are the people going that they can't find or just disappear, they come to Clayton County. They come into DeKalb County. They're going to Ben Hill County because I see the tags. See, I travel this state, all 159 counties. So no one can tell me because I get in my car and travel this state. And when I'm seeing these encampments, when I go home, yeah, they're in Clayton County because these people that are disappearing, that are having their encampments raided, that's where they're going. Just like when the city of Atlanta closed a lot of public housings, guess where they went to? They went to DeKalb County because I used to work for the DeKalb Housing Authority, and that's where they came. But it is happening all over the state. We've had many instances that has been shared today with people who were unable to receive the rental assistance, how those rental assistance that were allocated for the balance of state went to DeKalb, Clayton, Gwinnett, Fulton, and they had their own allocation. And now I get calls, emails every day of people who are now going to be homeless, and they're setting up camps like in Valdosta. We have some people from Valdosta on the Zoom call today, but primarily in Atlanta, but it is growing around the state.
Excellent.
Your story to start with, I want to tell you that the General Assembly did this past session, pass something that allows nonprofits to go into communities and build houses specifically for pregnant moms who have children.
Yes.
That they can come and stay in until their child is born, and then 18 months, they can continue to live there
Right.
while they bond with that new baby. while They
Right.
take care of those babies that they already have as they transition back out into the community. So we do hear what you're saying.
That is correct. I'm
And
familiar with that.
I appreciate what you're saying about poverty is profitable, because I have discovered that. And I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but I'm going to clear up something that I asked earlier, because it bothered me, and I emphasized the word a few times. Human beings don't disappear.
That's right.
That's
right.
We all have souls and we all walk this earth, but we don't disappear. We may move to another place, but we're all valuable. We all mean something,
That's right.
and no one disappears. But thank you, and God bless you for coming here.
That's right.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Thank you.
So you're Cordell, right?
Yes, I was born and raised.
Okay. I was just there, happened to be there on Friday.
Okay.
What is the homeless situation, unsheltered homeless in Cordell? I didn't notice anything while I was there.
Yes, in Cordell, we don't have a significant unsheltered homeless population. What you see mostly in the rural areas are people doubling up and tripling up. That's what you see. So you see more of the sheltered homelessness as opposed to the unsheltered homelessness. Because again, people in South Georgia tend to be more resilient, we tend to take care of our own. When I've done some disaster relief there after the tornadoes, we put everything aside. See, there was no Democrat, there was no Republican, there was no Black, there was no white. We all pulled together and helped each other as people.
And you might mention, Dr. Brown, to Senator Dugan's question, there's a place in Cordell called Hands of Hope, and they built like 10 little tiny mini houses, and you're allowed to live there as long as you work in the community to help out.
That is correct.
And you can, and you get, there's no charge, but you have to bring something to the table. I mean, you got to be able to go, maybe even pick up trash, maybe work at the courthouse, pick up, clean it up. And those
Right.
people, you're not supposed to stay. You're supposed to get back on your feet and then hopefully help somebody else. But what's happening is, you're probably right. If they get moved out, they may go to Ben Hill, they may go to Fish.
Right, right.
And they don't have that. So there you go. Vicious cycle. Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Amen. Reverend, is that Farrell Malone? Is that right? Did I say it right? Please come up, sir. You're dressed too nice not to give us a talk today.
And I've not dressed like this in the last 5 years.
It says Reverend. Is this another Baptist preacher? Just curious.
I am a Baptist preacher.
There we go.
Good morning.
Evening.
It's always morning to me. Amen. My name is Reverend Farrell Malone. I bring you greetings from the greatest city in Georgia, Waycross. Well, I tell folks you can't go to heaven.
Is that Blake Tillery?
You can't go to heaven unless you come to Waycross. It's the way of the cross.
The way of the cross.
No cross, no crown. I pastor the Macedonian Missionary Baptist Church of Waycross, just celebrated 25 years there, and was in Americus, Georgia prior to that. Was a part of the first actually African-American CEO of Koinonia Partners. Koinonia was the birth child of Habitat for Humanity. So the deal of housing and understanding what we need to do has always been on my heart and on my mind. Matthew chapter 31, verses 25 through 46 lays out the prerequisites for Yeshua, who we know as Jesus the Christ, as the 6 components of what it takes to be a child of God. And one of those is when I was a stranger, you took me in. In South Georgia, homelessness is directly different from the Atlanta metropolitan area. You can see homelessness here. In South Georgia, Waycross is the largest city in the largest county in the largest state east of the Mississippi. So therefore, we are the largest county geographically in the state of Georgia. So homelessness is not necessarily seen because we have people who have set up tent cities in the county areas. Also, we are the largest railroad switching classification station in the United States. And yes, people still do make it to town by a freight train. So homelessness exists. And one of the things that really is important to understand, as Dr. Bambi Hayes Brown and others have said, is homelessness is because people do not have anywhere to stay. But yes, there may be 2 or 3 families living in one household because we're trained that no one should be able to have to sleep outside. That is that. And so therefore there may be someone who's homeless and they may stay at this home for 3 weeks and they may stay at another home and actually take their family with them, because that is just the level of compassion and concern. What my biggest concern is when I read in the paper that $60 million was awarded to 5 or 6 nonprofits, and none of them were in South Georgia. It's as if South Georgia does not exist. And we from South Georgia end up getting irritated when we come to meetings like this, and the only thing we hear is Atlanta and DeKalb and their surrounding areas, because there is a population outside of the Beltway that exists. We're human. Hello? Sometimes people swing through there when they want to vote, but when the money is to come, South Georgia is not on the list. And so what I want you all to do as senators and as legislators is question whatever nonprofits there are. What extension do you have in actually getting things done? My church owns 2 houses. My family owns 2 houses. And we have literally put people up for a year at a time in those houses. We pay the electricity. We pay the everything. We provide the food because people are hurting. People are hurting. And even the other day, because one of our houses we had as a food bank and a clothing closet, thank God my grandson had a birthday and we had a bounce house. We had some squatters from Florida drive up in the driveway and get out and bust in the house. And they're walking through the house trying to see what they want. And of course, I explained to them that that was not an option for a Floridian. That's a burglar. That's exactly what that is. But we need the resources. Fresh Communities, I'm the founder of Fresh Communities. Fresh is an acronym that stands for Facilitating Restoration for Equitable and Sustainable Healthy Communities. Let's get very real. There was something that came through in the 70s called urban removal. It was not urban renewal. It was urban removal. It was a direct design to create a new ecosystem outside of the African-American community. So now in many African-American communities in South Georgia, we have houses that are blighted. And we have people living in those houses because the family may be up north. And so that's another form of homelessness. And the good thing about it is at least they have a shelter over their head. At least they're not having to deal with the rain, but they're dealing with safety concerns. They're dealing with the rodents. They're dealing with the rats. They're dealing with the possibility of the structure falling in. So what we need to do, and what we've started on, we've actually gotten approved to build 21 houses that we're about to do. The problem is the rents are going up. And we have literally landlords who are building box houses, 800 square feet, and charging $900. So we're working with the coding situation because that's one of the things that creates a homeless situation when I can't afford decent housing. So well, if you got 3 families living there, each one of them pay $300. Oh, yes. Yes, it's very tiny. So there are some things that we have to work on, and there are some things that we got to put in place. But what will also be awesome is that if your body recognized in the place of the disbursement of funds for homelessness and for unsheltered people, that you can think a little bit lower than Macon, Georgia.
Because I'll assure you, I've seen it personally. I know it's there.
Yes, sir.
Rural Georgia does not, in my opinion, get its fair share.
Yes, sir. And so I appreciate the time today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone. I worked with Ms. Gale for years. Amen. Thank you all for the opportunity of us being able to present. I drove up from Waycross, and you know, Waycross ain't no skipping a hop. It's Waycross, Georgia. It's way across Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
It's 240 miles. I don't care which way you go. But it is worth it for the invitation to come and share, because we need the monies to come down to make a difference in all of Georgia.
Just for edification factor, this is our second meeting regarding unsheltered. I'm sure there'll be another, because this is an extremely vast problem. So I'm just letting you know.
We're gonna do it in Waycross.
Yeah, we'll do it. I like that.
You can have it in Waycross. Amen.
Where we gonna stay?
We got the hotels covered. Oh, no, ain't no problem. I got a 3-bedroom house.
Pastor Farrell, thank you so much for making your way over here. I'm hearing from you though, and I just want to make sure I am getting this distinction, that in South Georgia, in your opinion, that the bigger issue is sheltered homelessness, that you have people doubling and tripling up, that's a greater issue than people who are sleeping outside. Am I hearing that correctly?
You're absolutely correct in that. However, it is hard for us to measure how many people are living outside because there's so much land.
Right.
So part of it is that there are people who are creating the shelters. And you can have a tent city in Waycross, out in Ware County, and nobody knows you there except the tent.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but the greater problem is that because of the situations of, and I think you've alluded to the fact that this is not something that you'll handle, when you have somebody making $9 an hour. Now, my background is personnel human resource management, and I understand that the basis of a regular job is 22,080 hours. You're making 18,700. And if I'm charging you $900 a month, then all of that has been eaten up to the tune of $11,100. So where do I eat? How do I pay the electricity on this house? So therefore, yes, they will double up. They will literally double and triple up. There may be 3 families in one house, and each one has a room.
So to be clear, if we're going to positively address this issue in Southwest Georgia, we cannot focus on only unsheltered housing. We would have to focus also on those who are sheltered and doubled up in order to truly affect change in Southwest Georgia. Is that correct?
And let me help you. Sherelle is from Southwest. I'm from Southeast.
I'm sorry. I just meant South Georgia.
I know. You're saying it's South Georgia.
It's from Jessup. So,
that's it. That's done.
Yeah. So I know. So I apologize.
What's her name?
I'm South Georgia. Jackson. She's Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just left Jessup.
Yeah. Okay. And so then my last question, or maybe this is more of a statement, is that I want to be clear that that we as a body cannot continue to abdicate our responsibility to look at minimum wage in Georgia. That is actually in our purview.
Yes.
And that may not be the purview of this committee in this exact moment.
But as a body,
I want to be clear that we do actually have power to say what our minimum wage is.
Yes, you do. Amen. Thank you so much.
One last thing, it might clear things that people don't realize. Some of our counties, like for example, Waycross, Worth County, and those type of things, they're 70 miles from end to end. I mean, you could put DeKalb and Fulton in them. They don't even realize how big geographically.
But when I'm traveling home and I pass Atkinson County, when I get to Ware County, you would think you can start closing things. I still have 22 miles.
Just to get to where,
And it's 20 miles on the other side of Ware County as well. So it is the largest county literally in the state of Georgia. And so we claim that, but we also need to make sure that we are able to develop and create the opportunities for our people, just as everyone else. And that's what Fresh Communities is working on doing.
And thank you for wearing that suit. You look really good in it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just lost 37 pounds so I can close up the vest. So that's why I'm excited.
Last question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for all that you do, Reverend Farrell. You've always had resources and committed resources to helping the underserved. You brought up a good point about the nonprofits, and one of the things I think this committee and others will have to look at is the money that was allocated for housing in all these areas with these nonprofits, because it came up in my county last week. We have to do an audit and make sure the money is being used for what it's supposed to be used for, and to help this housing, because we get calls every day for someone to be helped with housing.
Yes.
And then counties have housing funds available for nonprofits, and we look up and the money has not been used.
Right.
And the website say apply later.
Yes.
So there is a crisis in housing
Yes.
now, all around in Georgia too.
Yes.
So we have to really look at this. The nonprofits that are doing that, that have received this money, and we have to make sure, because I know much of this money will go back if it's not spent by December the 31st.
Wow.
And we have to make sure that the people are being helped with this housing this housing crisis, and they have a place to stay.
And please let them know that we have nonprofits in South Georgia. I think you've asked that question a few times. There are 501, we have 501c3s in South Georgia with accountants, with attorneys who can correctly administer and be held accountable. But we need to also make sure that you all as a body provide that for us.
Yes. One more thing, Doc. Yes, sir.
And I do want to point out that the vast majority of the funding that we see coming in the state comes in from the federal government.
Yes, sir.
And one thing we have to emphasize to them, and look, I love my senator peers from Metro Atlanta area, but one thing we have to remind the federal government is Georgia is more than Atlanta.
Yes, it is.
Metro Atlanta.
Yes.
And
amen.
In the counties I represent of Troop, Meriwether, Harris, and Muskogee.
Yes.
They need the funding, they need the housing and the other things like that. But what we have to do is partner up.
Yes.
And we do know there are a lot of corporate partners
yes, sir.
in this state that are huge. We brag about world headquarters, and sometimes they forget
yes.
that the state of Georgia is bigger than the city of Atlanta.
Yes.
And we need to remind them of that too. And it's champions like you down in South Georgia and throughout the state of Georgia that need to keep their foot on the gas, reminding these corporations and the federal government that this has to happen. But I'm sure this committee will remind our congressional delegation
yes.
that represents us in Washington, D.C., that money needs to go throughout the entire state of Georgia.
Yes, sir. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Reverend. I appreciate you.
Thank
and
you.
as one Baptist to another, I appreciate all your prayers.
Praise the Lord. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you all so very much.
All right, guys, here's where we are now. We're way past our time. We're at 4:30. I'm going to ask one more. I don't know who this person is. We got time for one more. It's on Zoom because we hadn't let anybody from Zoom talk today. Is there a Kelly Saxon on the line anywhere? Is there a Kelly Saxon?
Hello. Yes, we're here.
Is this Kelly Saxon?
It is.
Ma'am, you got 5 minutes.
yes.
Please try to help us out.
All right. Thank you for having us. Kelly Saxon here in Valdosta, Georgia. We're 3.5 hours, almost 4 hours from Atlanta. And I have Michael Smith with me here from the Greater Valdosta United Way. But we are in South Georgia. We are below the line of Macon, and we too echo the same thing about having those needs and the needs for the dollars to come down here south of the Macon line. We're facing both sheltered and unsheltered homelessness. We have close to 150 who are unsheltered, who are not living in hotels or anything. Just a couple of months ago, we had a mother who just had a 4-week premature baby that was living in the park. So these are the challenges that we are facing with individuals who are facing this chronic homelessness. Between our two school systems, we have nearly 600 homeless students. That is a combination of unsheltered as well as the ones who are sheltered living with family members. One family I spoke to, there was 10 people in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. Families sticking together because of the lack of affordability. We have had here recently 56 intents to evict filed at the courthouse in one day. We have in Valdosta a 3.3% unemployment rate. So we have what you call the working class poor. We also have people who are our white collar workers. I get messages from our nurses, messages from our teachers who are in need of housing. The issue is that we have businesses who come from out of town who buy up properties, and then they have a cash for keys policy telling people to move out within 15 days for $500, or they can wait to the end of the month for a new rent that is $300 more than their current rent. If not, they will be placed in a homeless situation. We do have programs with wraparound services such as our United Way, and I'm going to yield the floor to him soon, to Michael soon, but it's just that our programs need support. We have, we're number 22 is the largest county in Georgia, and we received 0.5% of the money that was supposed to be for Georgia Rental Assistance. And a lot of our challenges are with our individuals who have applied for that assistance, and our South Georgia Partnership to End Homelessness has been helping process those applications. Some who have never been reviewed, never been a silent processor, I'll go back and start from the start. Just all kinds of things that have been having a tremendous negative effect on what we're needing in our community. So Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can say what you needed to say on behalf of this, but we also do ask that please don't forget about us below the line down here. We are trying and we are in need of assistance.
Hello, thank you all for having us and thinking about the whole state. Michael Smith, I'm the CEO of the Greater Valdosta United Way. We cover 10 counties in South Georgia, with Lowndes County, Valdosta being the hub. And I'm also the current chair of the United Ways of Georgia State Association, representing the 31 United Ways across the state, with, of course, Atlanta being the largest and one of the largest in the country. There has been a lot of people that, you know, life has been tough on. We locally in United Way have direct services too. So we get called every day with our utility and rent assistance. There's also a lot of programs that aren't paying for hotel or bus transportation to help people get where they're going. We manage the EFSP money, the federal dollars. Now the recent phase 39 and 40 did add utility and motel stay, but you know, the funding helped, but has not been enough. One big thing that we're seeing with the 20 local agencies that we help support, of course, Boys and Girls Club, Boy Scouts, Red Cross, Salvation Armies, is that there has been a lot of funding for economic loss and learning loss for students, but there hasn't been many funds that have made its way to homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters for what they have had to spend to put people up in hotels. And they were mandated, you know, to stay open during the pandemic when a lot of nonprofits closed. The burnout and stress is real. And so many of these food banks and shelters and these human services of the staff and what they've been dealing with. And the funding just has not been there, especially like you say in South Georgia. DCA, with the federal dollars, you know, the populations of 500,000 got monies directly to those counties. And a lot of those partnered with United Ways of Atlanta, Augusta, Columbus, and Savannah. And they did excellent work, my United Way partners, to get people supported in those major metropolitan areas. Then they lowered the population to 200,000, which open that up to maybe a total of 10 counties across the state, but then the other 149 had to run through DCA. Being able to, if possible, to focus some dollars to at least the hub communities, which Valdosta and Albany would be considered that, or to get it down to 100,000 population county would open it up to another 20 plus counties that could get funding directly into those communities, where those community, city and county partners could partner with the local United Way, Salvation Armies, homeless shelters, which we have LAMP. We do have a homeless shelter and homeless outreach in our area. The only one between really Orlando and Macon for the South Georgia, North Florida area, to get those dollars out into the communities effectively and efficiently. A lot of people have talked today about not knowing the resources or what's available in the support. One big thing of that, especially in rural Georgia, is the lack of 211, which is a national database. 65% of the state's population is covered in 211, of course, in Atlanta, Savannah, Augusta, Macon, Columbus, but rural Georgia, the 60 counties across South Georgia aren't covered. And a lot of resources, we have limited resources in South Georgia, but they are there, but they may be 2 or 3 counties away, but you could still access those counties, access those resources if you knew about it or were able to call and connect. And funding to help 211 be statewide would be a big benefit of effectively and efficiently getting resources to people and save taxpayers dollars. Atlanta created 211 25 years ago, but Georgia has never been able to get statewide coverage. But unlike South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, and Texas, and many others. So I appreciate y'all letting us speak. Kelly is the head of our homeless task force, which our local United Way helps support, and some other people on the call for that. There are many students. Sorry, go ahead.
Is this Lowndes County or most of this coming from Lowndes County or city of Valdosta?
Well, I mean, Lowndes County is the county of 120,000 and the city of Valdosta has about 60,000. What question between the two are you asking?
Are the funding that you're not getting? I mean, is the county getting in or the city, or is it all together?
It's all together.
It's all together. It's not coming down through, but it would come through the county, not the city. Now, I will give credit, the city, their local ARPA dollars, the city of Valdosta graciously put $2 million up to help small businesses, and then did a $955,000, which they gave to us as the United Way to help nonprofits recover from COVID. And a lot of that went to nonprofits that focus on feed, clothing, and sheltering people and after school care. They've also designated $300,000 for home repair. But
is your unsheltered population growing?
It is.
Is your unsheltered?
We are seeing more and more people at the downtown square, sleeping on park benches, abandoned houses. A lot of it is single men. There are mental health issues. There are people that have pets and don't want to go into the shelters. We are fortunate that our Salvation Army has a limited men's shelter. LAMP is women and children, and then the Haven is for domestic abuse women and men shelter. So even with 3 locations with their different rules and regulations that United Way helps support, we are still seeing an increase of people. And a lot of that is also because we're on I-75 and just crossed the Georgia-Florida line. So many kids some are unsheltered in cars, but a lot are in, motels. But we know that the loss of a safe, stable home, I mean, that's the building blocks for everything else. It's hard to focus on your homework if you don't know where you're sleeping at night. And we see personally, there are a lot of people that just need a little bit to get by, the hand up, not the hand out. But even if it's $300, if you don't have it, it might as well be $3,000. There are some people that, are very far behind and is going to take a lot of money and support to help them out. But it's so much more effective to give people support to keep them where they're at than to let them fall all the way into homelessness or shelter life, and then try to build them back up to stability with, deposits and rental assistance and things. So we don't do as well for prevention and small support as we do, in other ways.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, I'm sorry, I've just talked too long.
No, it's okay. Just a quick question for you. When the person brought up the transient population of unsheltered homeless earlier, that's piqued my curiosity. Valdosta is kind of a close-knit community, always has been. You would know if they were people from Valdosta or Lowndes, as opposed to those that are transient off of 75. What are you seeing more of?
I would say it's a mixture, especially now since we've had these evictions. We do have the ones who are closer to the interstate area, but then we have the ones who are like this. I don't know if y'all can see this or not. We have the ones that are inside of the city, staying on park benches and staying inside of parks. And this is inclusive of women and children who are living inside of parks. So we have a young lady that was going to speak a little bit later in this, but just to kind of tell her story, she was employed, got COVID, was renting for 5 years with her son. That's the only home that he knew. They were living there for 5 years, an honor roll student. She got behind, wasn't able to pay, applied for the rental assistance. It never came through. We as a community raised the money to try to get her to be able to stay. It was less than $1,500. The landlord said it was too late, as they kept getting a runaround with the rental assistance program. So then she is now homeless. She is from house to house. She has been living in her vehicle, and her son's grades have fallen. They are facing depression, not only homelessness, but it does affect the mentality and the shame and embarrassment of facing that homelessness. So we have local people who are facing homelessness. With the increase of rent, even our elderly who are on a fixed income, who were living in these complexes that had a set rent, but now they've met that affordability period, that 15, 20-year affordability period, now it's going to market rent. So we are in need, we are in dire need of funding to help with this. We are a tight-knit community. We work well together. And we do the best that we can, but it's getting to the point. How are we supposed to continue to help people when we're continuously forgotten or stripped of funding? So now we don't even have funding for hotel, motel coming through, for Department of Community Affairs. That's no longer happening. Nobody in Valdosta got funded for that.
Yeah, I would just say more support for hotel, motel, and bus. What we see in Valdosta with it being on 75 and transient. And then also other counties around pick people up and drop them at the county line, and bring them into our community, because we do have a homeless shelter and one of the few across South Georgia. But when we deal with people with United Way locally and listen to a lot of people's stories, some people have help and family members that they need to get to, whether it be 200 miles away or 4 states away, but they don't have the funds and opportunity to get there. So that support. Recently, I got a call from the United Way in Brunswick, coastal Georgia. Justin's a friend of mine. They have somebody that's in Jessup that has a job and an opportunity in Alma, but they can't get the last 50 miles, and they're kind of just stuck on the side of the road and trying to figure out how to get somebody from Jessup to Alma when there's not good transportation and there's not Uber and opportunities or taxis, and we were trying to figure out a way to get that to happen. But there are so that is an issue that you see across rural Georgia, is connecting the dots to get those people where there are resources or where they have family members that can help them and take them in and give them that support.
And if funding is available for our community, we would like to be able to handle it locally. As Reverend Malone stated, we have very well qualified nonprofits, especially such as our United Way, who already works with 20 agencies within our community. So we appreciate it.
One thing United Ways, we specialize in raising money and then redistributing them and re-granting them out into a local community. So across the state, I think United Ways could have stepped up in major metros, but even across in smaller communities because we have those relationships with local partners and can be a trusted independent source to effectively distribute funds in our region, because you have to know the local community best.
One more question, please, from Senator Davenport.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that at the last meeting, we had Commissioner Nunn to come, and I remember asking the question about the funds, how much money was allocated, how much had we used? And he made the comment that it was all distributed to the various counties. And I can't remember if he said it was there was a formula or something, how people got the funds. But maybe one of the things we could do is ask the commissioner if he would send the report over to us for this committee so we could do.
He was supposed to send that. I will say on fairness, he did contact me and said he was going to be in a hearing in Savannah, Georgia, or he would have been here. So I just.
Okay.
That would be wonderful. I've been trying, a year ago, I did speak with the commissioner, but I know DCA is a big operation and they're handling a lot of different things. But I from what I've seen and been told as a local United Way and as the state association, the pot of monies that were supposed to be for the 149 counties that didn't receive directed funding into their communities, some of these big metros have effectively and quickly given out all their money and then went back to that pot 3 or 4 times, essentially in the back door to pull more funds, when the process for the 140 counties has been stalled and delayed in the processes. And that's completely understandable for the first 6 months of working up a new system, just like PPP loans and small business stuff was new to all of us. But it could have been effective and efficient and worked better by now for all the outside counties. Because like you said, there's only 10 counties that have 200,000 population or more, 10 or 11. So then everybody else is out of that mix.
And then
One more
lastly,
question.
one of our nonprofits who was processing those funds and still has not been paid the $20,000. South Georgia Partnership to End Homelessness has not been compensated for processing those applications, in which DCA said that they would compensate them for being that agency in our community for submitting those applications that were majority of them denied.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The slow process of paying the nonprofits and the people that are working with the landlords and the tenants has been very slow. And so a lot are out money and time and haven't been reimbursed in a timely manner. So.
Go ahead.
Thank y'all for your testimony today. I work with DBHTD and we have a housing voucher program, and a lot of the individuals on our vouchers have been experiencing some challenges with properties being purchased and then essentially kind of being pushed out, right? Or they want new tenants, they want to increase the rents. And I wanted to ask this earlier of some of our other testimonies, but I've got the opportunity now. So I'm curious whether that's something in the Valdosta community that you're seeing with these out-of-state purchases of multifamily properties, and if that's leading to some of the displacement that you're seeing.
No, I wouldn't say in Valdosta that we're seeing out-of-state people buying. If anything, it's just people that are small, landlords that are normal business people that the property's appreciated and now they're selling it to a homeowner. And that's just free market things happening in our area. We're not having large buyers or big corporations coming in and buying blocks or apartment complexes. I would say these are your mom and pop landlords that are just, it's a good time to sell to a family owner. But the cost of deposits is exceptionally high. If you have a $1,200 a month rent and you have to put $3,000 down and then a pet fee and utility deposits and all that, I mean, there's people that are 5-6 grand tied up just to lock in a house or apartment area. So it is difficult when a lot of ways, if your credit is good, you could even purchase a house with 0 to 3% down, but you're having to put more money down in deposits to just rent a place than sometimes you would have to even purchase a property.
I will say from my experience, we've been seeing it creep up a little bit more. It's not like they're buying the blocks like at a time. We had a college student who was gonna speak as well, but for the sake of time, he won't be, but he called and is facing that right now where a company has come in where he was paying $475 for a 2-bedroom. Now, if he wants to keep that 2-bedroom, it will be $1,600 a month. He's a college student who's not able to maintain that, and he graduates in the spring. So we did make contact with Dr. Carvajal, so we're trying to see what we can do with that. But it's so many more who are in that complex that has happened to. Even in another one of our properties, we have someone in New York who now owns that property and it's boarded up. A lot of the places are boarded up. So we have seen it trickle in more, but not like by a big neighborhoods. And some of our rental programs, and we did have a real estate company online too, but some of our larger real estate companies are able to maintain, but the ones who have smaller have been selling off some of those properties. And when they sell off those properties, you get new owners in who are saying that they're gonna have to bring it up to market rent. And which we were looking at $675 a month, now things are from $900 to $950 a month. And we have people who are in hotels who are paying $1,300 a month for a hotel that is a negative star, not even 1 star.
If there's anything that y'all could also do, it would be to really focus dollars on the senior class as a protected class to help seniors age in place in their homes and their rentals, because a senior can't get a second job, their fixed income and Social Security. And a lot of times they have not been able to access the portal and the system well. So many 60-year-olds, 75-year-olds are not good at online platforms and systems and computers to do the process. And we know how much of everything takes place online these days. So focusing dollars for seniors would be a big help. And I have a great relationship with Senator Russ Goodman and our South Georgia delegation. We've been speaking to them and they're aware of the situation. And I just want to thank y'all for talking about this and caring and listening to what's happening outside of Metro Atlanta as far as the unsheltered and the homeless and the at-risk of housing.
And you're welcome.
60's not that old. I take offense at that.
I agree with that. I agree with that, sir. I think that is the level, the age.
So with that being said, you got a contingent from Lowndes coming to Carrollton on Friday night. Come early, spend a lot of money at the stores there. Y'all's football team is coming over, so we're looking forward to seeing y'all there.
Lowndes wins, trust me. Randy.
Well, West Georgia beat us pretty good at VSU. We don't like to talk about that right now either.
No, I do.
One thing I want to remind, one thing I want to remind everybody as a newly minted 60-year-old is that it's and I know that Commissioner Munn has been here before and we've talked and I don't think there's anybody that realizes and gets disgusted with the bureaucracy of government as I do. I've been involved in government, whether it's local or state, for 40 years now. But we allow a lot of people to use the pandemic as a crutch throughout this process. But let's be real. We did not increase the number of state employees. We sent people home. We had people working from all different locations and everything else. The federal government, once they started moving, started flooding communities with money. We've seen fraud throughout the system. So I think before we lock and load and run into battle with state employees, we need to remind ourselves to look at the process as it goes, because what the federal government sends down, they send it here for human beings, men and women who live amongst us, who dealt with the pandemic like all of us did. through this process of getting things out. And I know that my good friend Leader Dugan, as a leader in the United States Army, and myself in law enforcement, we understand what a hot wash is, and we understand what an after action plan is, and that we do need to look at how a lot of these things were done. And we need to do it under the glasses of understanding that this was done during a pandemic. So then in the future, should this happen, that we do have better and more efficient systems. So as we go through this, it's a learning experience. It is not dragging any state department up to the top of Golgotha and nailing them to a cross, because during this pandemic and during this process. And so as we go through here, let's build a better model and not just blame people for things not working out the way they should, when we know the vast majority of the problems that occurred in the District of Columbia and not in the state of Georgia. But thank y'all.
And then also, if we could be open
What-
to those resources that can help with them. I know several agencies like Georgia Ag and the different ones, with Sherelle that's involved with, offered to help to distribute those funds. So we're capable, we distribute the other funds, the rapid rehousing and so forth in our own community. So I think we could be a part of the solution with being able to have accountability and still administer funds for our own community, because we know
Right.
what can be layered and what can work together. So thank you.
Listen, thank you all for your giving us that insight down there. And I want to say one thing before we end the hearing here. We manage properties, my company does. We manage properties for people that own real estate. We own real estate that we rent out. It's not just the fact that we're out of properties, folks. Georgia's growing. There's more people pouring into Georgia every day. And the problem we deal with is ad valorem taxes have gone up. You got insurances are out of sight. So where a property was rented for $650, it's now $950, and you're lucky if you can get it. You're lucky if you can get it. The average rent, believe it or not, in South Georgia now, we're not talking about Atlanta, it's probably $1,100 a month. $1,100 a month, and that does not include your taxes and your utilities. Okay, and Atlanta, I don't know what the average would be up here, but I know my apartment rent's expensive. I can tell you that. And the reality of it is we're blaming the property owners for some of the issues that are happening here, when in reality they gonna rent for whatever they can get, because they gonna want as much as they can get. And they're going to try to cover their rent no matter what they do. And you're saying people maybe come in or out from the other areas buying these communities. Well, everything is for sale if somebody wants to buy it, I'm assuming. And what happens is when someone buys it and pays this enormous price that properties are bringing now, guess what? Rent goes up. Rent goes up. If you'll notice, most rental companies now are only doing month to month. That's basically across Georgia. I mean,
And so I think that's why it would be helpful to have those mixed use
Right.
properties with your market rent and then your non-market rent to help.
Oh,
people
absolutely.
Who are not capable.
Absolutely. And it boils down to what we started off the conversation a while ago: accountability, where the funding is, and how we get it to where it's supposed to be. Thank you all for your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, I hate to tell y'all this. I got a dozen more people who want to speak, and I got more people on Zoom. We just got to do another meeting. There's just too much here. And I'm sorry, everybody's got places they got to be. They've already said. So if you don't mind, we're just going to adjourn this meeting on this second meeting, and we will come back again. And please wear your coat and tie. Please drive carefully. I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.